Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. On this episode, Taylor, Ben, and I sit down and recap our 2023 charter fishing season from May until the end of October. Tell a lot of fish stories, a lot of funny stories with customers, talk about how the fishing was throughout the season, from striped bass to haddock and ground fishing, tuna fishing, a lot of tuna fishing talk. It's a really good one. We wrap up the conversation with a few stories from our hunting season thus far. As you may know, Taylor and I have recently got into deer hunting. Ben's been hunting for a while, as have many of our other guests. So we make a little pivot at the end of the conversation and talk about what we've seen and what we've been fortunate enough to harvest. So it's a really good one. Hope you guys enjoy, and looking forward to pumping out many more of these throughout the winter before we go right back into our 2024 charter fishing season. So thank you all. Enjoy. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Hook around. Yep, that's the one. That's the real one. Get up there, man. All right, get that down low. All right, that real good. We doubled up. We doubled up. Woo! All right. Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that rock.
I got one of those extinguisher calls.
Yeah.
Because I had that other like cheap Bass Pro one with like the Snorweeze thing on top of it. Mm-hmm. So I got one of the extinguisher ones because I didn't have like a fawn or a doe setting.
Yep.
So I did just a fawn one. I did like one fawn call that other morning.
Yes.
And then I'm like, whatever. And I was like chilling. I'm on my phone. And I look up and the fucking deer standing like,
oh, no shit,
40 feet in front of me. I'm like, oh God. Didn't even see him come in. And
was he there the whole time? And you
no, I did see it like
I'm right here.
I did see it like half walking. I did see it half walking like from the swamp area. It was cool. It was a little fun coming to a phone call.
Makes sense.
But it was just cool to see that work.
Oh, yeah.
Because I haven't used it yet. Mm-hmm. And it worked like the first time ever trying it. And I literally did one, like, that was it.
Every time I've had a response to like a fawn or like you start sliding down towards like anything under like doe grunt.
Yeah.
Seems like usually you're calling in either a doe, yearling, or fawn. But, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to. I was hoping a doe.
You wanted to eliminate.
I was hoping a doe would come in. That's kind of what I was. Thinking.
And what was it?
It was a doe, but it was just like
a small one,
a little baby.
Yeah.
They taste
Still
the
had baby
best,
fur on it, and I was like, I think it'd be really cool if you're killing this thing.
Yeah.
The one I killed last year was small. Was that size?
Dude, it was pretty small. It had like brand new Labrador Retriever hair on it. You know that like flop claw hair? Like that's what it had. I couldn't believe how small it was this time of year. I didn't think the fawns were still that small. It was probably like,
That's pretty big.
no, like including the head. It was like this big. Like its body was probably like this.
Was it 100 pounds?
No way. Yeah, no way. It was the size of Riley, maybe. No, it was just cool to see that call work like the first time trying it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other. It literally big beeline to me. Walked around underneath me for a while. Then he realized like, oh, there's no deer here. So then he's like looking around, or she's looking around, and then she looks up at me because she must have got like the tiniest bit of scent. She looks up at me and she's like trying to see what I am, not moving, and then like walks like 5 feet over here, like pretends like she's eating, then looks back at me.
Oh yeah.
And then she walks around, and then she just walks like perfectly the exact same path she came in. It's kind of cool.
It's cool.
All the way through the swamp and stuff. Never jumped, never made a noise. Just you could tell she was like, "What the hell are you? You know, you're something in the tree."
Yeah,
Sure.
But
That's cool.
yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah.
I was hoping Mama was gonna swing by, or Uncle. You know.
I think tonight's gonna be my last sit. That rain's supposed to already be done or be done by like 2, and there hasn't been really much movement at all the last couple of days with the weather. So I'm hoping that they pop out right at sunset and get one more. I mean, I'm happy with the way this season's gone,
I should hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so.
but I do have one more surplus tag,
Yeah.
and it would be nice to have a little bit more meat. I'm a meat whore, dude. Next year we have to haddock pillage. That was one thing I missed. It sucked. I mean, we already talked about this in part 1 of this conversation, but that's one thing I did miss was having a nice, at least a couple weeks worth of haddock.
Well, I mean, I spent all this time getting my boat ready to go in as early as I could go in. And literally, I go out my first trip, like offshore with my boat to go to, well, inshore, offshore to go those haddock humps.
Yep.
And got on like 1 or 2. And then like that next weekend, guys started getting on them out there. But my gas tank popped a hole in that
that's
first trip.
right.
So I had to pull the gas tank out of yada, yada. So pretty much I ended up missing haddock season altogether. I got like 1 haddock. I was like, excellent.
You did. I feel as though catching a giant solo
Yeah.
at Stone Ledge made
Yeah,
up for your fuel tank.
It did. It did. I mean, I did.
You mean on a haddock? No, you mean like a brown haddock?
Bleep out George. Just bleep out a stick. Bleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget how much lead. I think it was a 16-ounce lead.
Just say
And a
a
pollock.
ground fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A stone ledge ground fish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I did also have a pollock out. I don't know if that's
That's fine.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
P.S. Inshore state pollock
the
are
first
all legal.
drift,
No matter the
which
size.
we found out later in the year because there was a few times. Remember, we're like, there's that one in there. You're like, how did that gummy bear get in there?
Yeah.
But
So
you're like,
Division Marine Fisheries, we had them
You
on the boat
actually
and
can.
just explained to them like, which I'm sure it's probably clear and just we didn't realize it was that clear.
I know, I kinda
But you
thought-
can keep any size pollock
Any-
inshore and within 3 miles.
Those things are lethal at times.
Yeah.
They swim right down on the bottom and
do
get
catch 'em.
slurped up.
They do get smoked, but I feel like they're spit out a lot.
yeah, it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
I feel like some days they work just fine. Usually, like if the fishing's pretty good, I feel like if it's kind of a grind with mackerel, then usually it's not going to be like the secret. But maybe it's that different bite.
That crazy. There were 2 really crazy days. I know we're backtracking here.
Wicked bad back.
Before we forward track. In the mouth, that day where no matter what bait you pitched out, you were on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you put a pollock down, we were
Yeah.
getting like larger overs.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they're just like they're actually really fast fish, but I feel like they escape to the bottom instead of escape up.
Yeah.
So I feel like the big ones
And they can hide
pin
in
them,
the
can pin
rocks.
them down to the rocks and then just
Yeah.
suck them out of the rocks. With mackerel, they're having to chase them all the way up.
Yeah.
All right. So
Also, that same day before we leave, we got to figure out how to catch them on crabs.
Yes.
I don't know how many fish I filleted this year. They were just
crabs.
stuffed full with crabs.
was that with you when we were trying to catch them on crabs?
We tried them on like
Split shots, everything.
split shots, and just like free drifting them, trying to keep them down low,
Yeah.
maybe. But putting them on the down rod in the river, you'd think that would work.
One thing we haven't
I
tried.
thought it swung back one time, but we didn't get hooked on them.
I don't remember.
Jig
I would have
head.
been. A jig head
A
might
jig
work.
head
Yeah.
through the corner like they do for permit
Yeah, that might work.
and drift it back with that. So it's like bouncing the bottom rather than just, mid-water drifting. Because it's a pretty light bait, even with a split shot. And the thing's probably trying to swim as well, even though they're not like a Florida pass crab that actually swims.
I think chumming with crabs would be something fun to try too.
To tog too, it sounded like that kind of heated up late this year. There was some guys
Yeah.
saying they were having pretty good success out of Green Harbor, out off of, Plymouth, but
All right, we're getting
Last
sidetracked.
crab tangent.
Yeah.
I went to a restaurant with Claire the other night. Delicious. But there was green crab and 2 different types of shellfish in a dish, and one of them was green crab. and I couldn't do it, dude.
I would have been interested in trying that. Maybe there's a market for these things
I've
now.
eaten it before.
Are they all right?
We caught them. So we were catching. We obviously weren't fishing appropriately, but we had a dead bait that picked up crabs in the North River, and we pulled it in and we boiled it in a beer can and ate the crab.
Dude, of course you've done this.
Not a lot of
No
meat.
one else in the history of the world has done this.
Not a
besides Ben.
lot. Not a lot of meat, I'll say. So it's like the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze. If you got some bigger ones, maybe, but tasting like crab. It was pretty good.
Wow.
I don't know if
was
I can
pretty good.
do
That's
it.
a lot of work.
Yeah, like you're getting like a
You're getting
little
the body meat probably mostly.
I don't know. I forget.
You just eat them all.
No, well, I remember the little front claw arm. I was like, well, there's your meat.
Yeah.
And it's like you get like this one little like fingernail sized nugget.
Yeah, use a toothpick to pick it
Yeah,
out.
you're like,
All right, so enough tangent.
We finished our last section of this podcast with
We wrapped up.
all like the goofy, cool stories from the year.
We
on our
talked through
boats.
the highlights of our charters.
Yeah.
Then
Epic. I wish not so many people were out there, but
the radar map on some of those mornings was just insane.
Silly.
You're like, it looked like you were in the middle of like a herd of birds or
I know.
something.
what's this? The fleet in
Yeah.
December.
I couldn't believe the first day it was blowing like southwest 30
Yeah.
all afternoon, all night into the opening day. Pretty much died down to like 20 maybe by 8 a.m., which still was not nice.
Yes.
In December, it was high 30s, if I recall, temperature-wise.
It was mild.
It was mild, but it was very breezy.
The first day, December 22, was exponentially worse than anything we saw.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That day was insane.
Yeah.
Crazy rough, crazy cold.
Yeah.
But
still, like how many boats were out that day versus...
Oh, yeah.
Like, we went out and Corey and I left early. We left at like 2 a.m., I think.
why don't we summarize? You fished with Corey
Yeah.
on bank robber at a Situate
Okay.
with who was crew?
So, the first day was me, Corey, and Bill Queso. Mm-hmm. Second day is me, Corey, and Tangles. And then the third day never happened for us because we had battery issues.
And you fished with Pete how many days?
We did 2 days.
2 days. And I fished with Weber
4 days.
4 days.
Yes.
Yes. And Paul Richardson,
Yep.
who's awesome. But anyways, so Corey,
So we decided we wanted to leave early because remember, previous years, so many of the bites were in the dark on either side, either in the morning or at night. And come to find out, you could catch them all night this year. It seemed like there was quite a few random bites all night. But we got there, we went slow, like 8-9 knots. So we got there around 4. Sun didn't rise until like almost 7. And we got like the tiniest bit of false light around maybe like 6. It was like enough that you can maybe see your middle balloon. And we already marked like 5 or 6 in the dark, maybe even more than that. So we knew they were there. We were just basically drifting the high grounds. And we were catching bait all night pretty much. Single giant. I couldn't believe the baits.
massive dude.
Massive mackerel.
They finally found
Not
that
huge
Southwest
herring,
area.
but like big enough herring.
Oh yeah, fishable.
Fishable herring. A lot of them were all obviously skinny for the time of year. So I think I caught a herring first. I had that out. And then I immediately like put a mackerel on once we caught our first mackerel and pretty much instantly went off. But it was just silly. And a lot of down rod bites, a lot of deeper bites. There were definitely floater bites too, but it seemed like if you can have a mackerel around like between 65 and 80 feet, and we were drifting in like 85 feet of water, 82 feet of water. That was kind of the ticket for us anyways.
I don't know what your take or you guys' take is on it, but it felt like there were roamers in the bait in the dark into the wee hours / overnight, like you said.
Yeah.
And then once the sun came up, they just poured in with the birds on top of
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it
I
seemed
think they were eating sand eels. Like, it was
Yeah.
slightly different. Because we had sand eels in all of our fish with mackerel and herring. But the sand eel seemed fairly fresh, like big enough that, fresh enough that they were still whole.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're eating the sand eels on the surface or pushing the herring and mackerel up. But they weren't like flying out of the water like they were chasing mackerel. They were coming up like they're either eating herring or sand eels. But yeah, it was silly.
Yeah, it wasn't really
Sick
like
fishing.
full airborne jumps. It was all
But they had to be up high because day one, we didn't mark a single fish. Maybe a couple like maybes, but like everybody was tight. As soon as you got a bait in the water, like pretty much you were going tight from like you were saying, false light all the way until like 10, 11. It was just melee.
Yeah.
And but you're not really marking fish like you would think you'd mark 200 fish on a day like that.
Yeah.
And it was just like I can't say for certain if we actually marked a fish.
The big thing is like think of how many, like how much. Obviously, you had the second. I don't know if you got a bite one of the days.
So day one we got 2 bites, and
Yeah.
day 2 we didn't get a bite.
You didn't get a bite.
We got a
which
shark
was a
bite.
lot slower. Day
Yeah.
2.
Oh yeah.
But there was also like
all the boats.
140 boats.
Yeah, we also went to the same spot, and it felt like it did the same thing as last year, where it kind of like moved northeast
Yeah.
a little bit. Seemed like the guys who had success had, either started at the eastern edge of the fleet or northeastern edge, and then like kind of kept moving that way
Yeah.
as the day went on.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to do when day one, like you
So
find
easy.
you get on the birds, and if you like kind of set up drift near pretty damn close to the birds, it would work. And in the morning, our problem was on day 2, there was a good pack of birds that was like almost on the southern edge. And we were like, do we go with what the history was from last year and what it kind of was seeming like? Or do we just go to this kind of pretty good pot of birds on that southern edge? And we did that, and it looked good, but no fish.
Seemed like that second day, everyone put a hurting on them the first day. So they were skittish in the bait. Like there were bites in the dark, gear was hidden. There weren't a ton of boats in the pitch black. Like an hour before sunrise, really when it got nuts. Then all that pressure, where we started day 1 was just so intense that it popped off for a shorter period of time, like you said, to the north.
Yeah.
You'd see the pressure affect it immediately.
Oh,
I mean, they were untouched virtually for an entire month.
Yeah.
Guys that were running a handful of charters here and there, was as many as you wanted to hook. You would see them, smashing, marking, whatever. But you put that much boat pressure on them in a 48-hour period.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
You almost wonder if, like thinking about this as a bigger picture, you almost wonder if you like didn't fish in July, how many more fish would come inside. Because like think of how many new groups of fish reach that fence every day of boats in July, reach the fence
Like,
and get killed or poked or whatever, and just never come back in the bay. Like they have to. You would think that they do that, but maybe they're not that smart. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like would we see way more fish if we didn't fish as hard in July, or which I'm not saying we shouldn't fish in July.
I think there's just,
like I want to fish in July.
I just think
bad.
there's so many.
So many. But what makes December so insane in certain areas?
Because you had 2 months of low fishing pressure.
That's what I mean.
It seems like
with tunas around though.
Yeah, but it seems like every time, you got like, there's that August to September lull where, like, say it closes down for 2 weeks.
It always ends up good.
And then it's really good. Right. You find like 2-3 spots that are on fire, couple days of, kill day fishing pressure, and then they shut off, and now you're searching for something new.
Yeah.
And then maybe you haven't, September usually closes kind of quick, and then October starts up, and, you get a good couple of days again too. So it's like, it seems like it closes down and then the fish can like start regrouping.
Yeah.
You know, and like either, like you said, it kind of seems like, say there's a little wolf pack of 5 fish.
2 of them get poked.
Well, but then on the closed days, they're not. So now
Right.
those fish kind of settle in. They find their little
That's
pack
what I
of
mean.
bait. And then the next day or, you know, the next tide, another pack of 5 fish finds that bait or another pack of 2 fish finds that bait.
Yeah.
And over the course of like 2, 3, 4 weeks, all of a sudden now there's 50, 60, 70 fish that are kind of hanging in that area. They're like, oh, this is safe. You know, I haven't been disturbed here. There's good food. Why should I leave? And then next thing you know, there's 30 boats sitting on top of them, and they're like, ooh, these mackerel are slow. And then,
Mackerel are really easy to catch.
and then they're just like, Charlie, where'd you go, Charlie? Charlie, come back.
There's a good meme I sent you at one point in the season. It's like some movie, you know, 2 people are talking, and someone just gets like sucked from the earth into the sky.
That's what I picture giant
Oh,
cats.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, like when you set the hook on like a
Yeah.
bass, and it just...
Dude, that deer
Holy
kid on
shit.
TikTok and stuff is pretty funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That kid doing like the deer impression. We should do tuna impressions.
I know.
That'd be
would be
amazing,
funny.
dude, right?
I like this kid who dresses as the squirrel.
Yeah,
He's
that's
like
the
that
same
kid.
kid. That's the,
Yeah,
that's the same guy.
He's just
Yeah, yeah.
running through the woods, just smashing trees. I
Dude,
love it.
I know.
It would be funny. That's a
Right?
great idea.
Well, it's kind of like stealing the idea, but not because you're changing
Tweaking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, December pressure that second day was definitely there.
Yeah.
Third day, even more so. Less boats though.
Yeah. And then the 4th day was like,
And fourth day
no
they were
bite.
gone.
Yeah.
I think we marked. I think we only marked 1 fish,
The whole day.
1 or 2. I think we marked 1 passerby, and then I think we marked a passerby, and we said once we mark one, if he doesn't eat, we're putting a herring on the down rod. Then we put a herring on the down rod. Then we had one shoot up and look at it like 4 times and didn't eat it and went away. And there was some fish in the bait in and around the mackerel boats in the morning. But I think there was like, I don't know, 20, 30 boats, handful of bites. You know, the birds were there, but the birds were, you know, looking as well. The eels
yeah.
weren't getting pushed up to the surface from the mackerel and from
Yeah.
the tunas. The mackerel were comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, say there was 500 tuna. There had to have been
A lot.
a lot of tunas.
Oh, yeah.
Look at
Like
this. The
hundreds
bait,
and hundreds of
the
tunas.
bait on the last day. I'm going to pull this picture up and show it to the camera.
Yeah.
The bait
amount
on
of
the
mackerel and
last
herring.
day.
Yeah, we weren't
But
even...
the bait was that crazy the last day because the fish weren't there.
I feel like the bait was pretty good. At
Like
least
it was good. but
Saturday
it
and
wasn't
Sunday.
like-
It wasn't like this good.
No, that's a lot of bait.
No. Show that to the camera. Yeah.
Just read it out.
I don't know if you can see that. The whole screen.
The whole screen. But zero pressure on it. You know?
Yeah, zero
And then it would
tuna
pin
pressure.
for like
Yeah,
2
I was-
seconds, no mark, and a seal would pop up. Or a whale would pop up.
Yeah.
They just weren't there. They were gone. We also had, didn't we have a wind direction change?
Yeah. Went to like northeast. I
Yeah,
think.
it went to northeast.
bunch of southwest.
Yeah.
Fishing's the least in the east.
But it was sick. We saw some cool stuff. Some of the surface feeds that we personally saw were insane.
Oh yeah, insane.
We ended up catching one in the dark at 4:00 in the morning. We left at 1, got out at like 2:30, 3:00, and then we were just marking fish after fish after fish from 3:30 till finally we hooked up on the down rod.
Yeah.
It was cool. It's cool to see that many fish. I mean, I'm sure guys have experienced that many fish around in December. I don't necessarily think it's like the words got out. I just think it's getting better and better and better as we have.
I think it's a little of both.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a little of both. I think there's
And milder early winters,
right.
you know, at least for the last handful of years.
Yeah, you wonder if it's, you know, if it's going to continually get more mild, or if it's going to just if ebbs and flows. You know, like if we have another mild winter, we may see some even better striper fishing next year.
Yeah.
Be interested to see.
I mean, this year's an El Nino, I think they're saying. So, I
yeah.
mean, it's generally a little bit more mild you know.
Yeah.
It'll probably get cold February, March. I feel like it's going to be another one of those winters where you think you're about to make it out of it. You're going to be like thinking about unwrapping the boat, and then all of a sudden you get like 3 feet of snow in March, and then like the next week you get another foot, and then, you know, you're like, it's April now, and you're like, what the hell? There's still snowbanks.
I don't know.
But December was savage.
It seems like every 10 years you get like a good snowy winter around here. 2015 was, you know, 2014, 2015, we had that crazy winter that kind of pushed off into, you know, early spring.
Yeah.
And then we've had kind of a lull.
Definite lull. Seems like the fishing just gets better and better for the most part. I mean, I still think the second year I was full time with Dad. I forget what year that was. 5 years ago. So would that be 2018? That year was just silly with release fishing and kill days, because you know, it just seemed like especially Middlebank wasn't this like insane hotspot yet. You know, we had definitely a lot more freedom that year, and then it just kind of just continually got crazier.
COVID changed how people worked, and
of
how
course
much time they were spending on the water. Completely changed everything.
Yep.
So December was great.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Well, let's dovetail into lessons learned on the season then.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Start
start?
with the charter season, then we'll talk about December.
All right. Yeah, well,
Let's just start with December,
all right.
because I've been dying to hear these words.
Yeah, you haven't heard it.
No.
So our Saturday was awesome and terrible at the same time. So
In December.
First day in December. Got out there. We were like toying with doing a late start because we're on a 25-foot boat. Yep. It was supposed to be pretty nasty and then like kind of diminish. But like we're looking at it all night, you know, hoping there's an update where it's like a little bit better. And we're like, honestly, like they show it going down, but when it's going from like 30 to like 27 to 25, you're like, let's just go, because it's not actually going to feel different. And like it really didn't diminish. Maybe by like 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon, it kind of diminished, but then it picked right back up again. So it was just a rough day. But either way, we get out there. We didn't leave super, super early, but you know, we left around first light, got there half hour after. And we see some birds. We like stopped. We're looking at the birds, jigged up some bait, and we're like, let's just kind of bump into these birds. Put out a floater, put out a mid, also floater. I think it was a 3-pole from the swivel on the far, and then I did 5 for the mid, no weight. And I was like literally putting the weight on the down rod and the far swings. And we're on and off and fighting, and same deal, you know, a million boats. So you're kind of walking the fish out of the fleet.
Yeah.
And so we did all right. You know, my buddy's like not a full-time fisherman, but like he's fished enough. And so like we were getting some, you know, I'm like, get the boat between the other guy and try and redirect the fish. And we got a pretty good system. It was going all right. And the hook just pulled. It was still snotty. But we fought that fish for like 45 minutes, pulled the hook. Kind of bumming, and we're like, well, everyone's still spinning around. Literally, we look back, we're like, the birds are right behind us like a mile, so we stretch some rods, get back over there, put baits out, and we're just sitting there like, well, that was probably our shot for the day. And like literally that fast, I'm like, I should get some water. Just the two of us.
Yeah.
Just fought a fish for an hour. Didn't even have a chance to grab a water, and we're on again. I'm like, all right, here we go. So I'm like, I just got the fish to the point where it was like down and being predictable too. So I did the hard part. What the hell? Like,
Yeah.
But so fight this fish. Another asshole stayed in the fleet. We were trying to get him out of the fleet. We eventually get him out of the fleet. And we're walking the fish, and it's like, it's down, but it doesn't want to pinwheel, and like we're trying to keep the boat kind of down sea but not get sucked off him too much, blah blah blah. the fish is starting to pinwheel, and we come through this section of high flyers, and I still am like a little confused. The way it was all stretched out, we're like, how are we stuck in this thing? But I'm like, we're stuck in this thing. I'm like, this is so. The way we were, now we're back to the sea, and I'm like, we got to back up into it because he's like, there was like a line going between two high flyers or something, or just the way it was. And because we were pretty much down on the fish and we came in between them. It was like their buoy.
Someone could have sawed one off earlier.
Well, because the buoy was like 100 yards, 75 yards, to one side of us. And we were like down, the fish was straight down. I'm like, oh, we're fine. And the next thing you know, I'm feeling that ratchety pull on. I'm like, what the frick? So we back up. And we get the fish comes out and around, and like it kind of worked out. Sometimes when you get in those situations, it's like the best thing if you don't lose the fish, because now the fish is dog tired because he was all wrapped up.
Yeah.
Then the fish kind of lazily goes into pinwheels, and like he's coming up now. So it was like went from like barely thinking about pinwheeling to being like full pinwheel and like gaining 10 feet every time. So he does 3 or 4, he's coming up, and like we're not needing to move the boat. I'm like, all right, get back here. And so Pete comes back, we're getting ready, the thing comes up, and had like 3-4 wraps on the swivel, throws, misses, comes around again. I'm like, wait for it, make sure you got him. Throws again, misses. I'm like, oh boy. The second one, and like, they were pretty good, shot opportunities, like plenty of wraps. The second throw, the line got wrapped around the main line.
Okay.
And now the fish is just laying on the surface. I'm like, oh, what the fuck? And so we don't really have another good harpoon. We just had one harpoon. Mm-hmm. This is where lessons learned start coming in. Mm-hmm. It's wrapped up, and we were able to like get like enough slack that he could get the harpoon back, but it's still wrapped up. And he sticks it on this third time. It came around one more time, sticks the thing. So we got him unhung out of the high flyer.
Yeah.
And, that's a good thing sometimes. Now we didn't lose him. The fish is super tired. And we were still in between 3 high flyers, but we got the fish is pinwheeling up super fast. And every rotation gaining like, 10 feet on him.
Yep.
The boat, we're down sea. He's not swimming under the boat hard. He's coming out. We're fighting out of that midship holder, which is way better. He was pinwheeling counterclockwise, which in hindsight, like there's a little, so he's pinwheeling counterclockwise and coming into the boat, coming out from underneath it, pretty clean. So he's getting down. I start seeing, swivel. I'm like, Pete, come back. He's right here. Comes up, get him on, get like 3 wraps on the rod, swivel 3 wraps on, and
in the reel. Yeah.
And I'm like, stick him. And he throws, misses him, gets the harpoon back, comes around again. He didn't really even sound down when he missed, which was like a surprising thing.
For some reason, those big ones don't a lot of times. Like they're so tired that it doesn't faze them.
I feel like the average size fish caught wasn't that big. This was 107 to 110 is my guess. It was a jumbo barn door. And he comes around again. I'm like, stick him. And he throws, misses. But that time it gets tangled up on the main line or on the leader. And the fish, the most painful part is there wasn't another good usable harpoon.
Was the swivel? So was the swivel still in the reel while you had? So at least you weren't hung above the swivel.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the fish is. Well, but the part that's frustrating is the fish is just like tail kicking on the surface right there, and we're trying to untangle the harpoon line off of the leader so that we can harpoon him, and so. It had like maybe 2 wraps around, and like it was just a pain to try and get that. So we were able to pull a little slack, like give a little slack, get a little slack, got the harpoon back, but it's wrapped up around the main line. The fish comes back in, he sticks them, and so it's all wrapped up. The fish sounded down when he got stuck, but he was stuck good right behind the gill plate, like not coming out. Fish sounds down a bit now. I fight him back up on the rod. I'm like, get ready on a gaff because it's all wrapped up. We can't fight him on the dart line. And he comes back up to the surface. Now he's just laying on the surface. And I'm just still fighting him on the rod. I'm like, get a gaff in him. And the fish is like laying there. And I look over at this gaff and I'm like, what the heck's going on with this gaff? The gaff is like pretty much like this straight. Like it's more of a harpoon than a gaff at this point.
It's a poker.
Yeah. And so like I'm like, all right, so I reach over for this other harpoon that we have, which is like an old thick, like aluminum floating harpoon.
Yeah.
And
big veiny triumphant bastard.
Yo, yeah, with like a cable coming off of it, and it was tied onto a jet ski rope or a water ski rope. That's what the harpoon line was on this one. And so I'm like, well, I mean, it's better than nothing. The fish is here, and I like hit it, and I feel it hit it, and it just bounces off. I'm like, the fuck was that? So I'm like, I throw that thing back down. He's still trying to gaff it. And like, I'm like, I don't know.
He's just raking.
Yeah. So I reach over for another gaff and I'm like, this dude's just like bent out. And I'm like, what the heck? So there was 2 or 3 gaffs on the boat and 2 of them were like straight. So I'm like, ah, well, naturally by this time the fish decided that it wanted to go down. So it starts sounding and, as soon as it starts going down, the rod goes ding. I'm like, ah, fuck. I'm like, I know it was a good, harpoon shot.
Yeah.
And between like the gaff surprise and like grabbing other stuff, I'm like, I didn't know how much line had actually come out of the basket.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, we're almost out of line. The ball's like coming up. And I just like toss the ball, not really thinking that it might have been a short harpoon line. Come to find out there was only like 80 feet of harpoon line.
Oh my God.
So the ball comes out of the basket and I just like kind of flip it over because the fish was going with a head of steam. And I just watched the ball go. Oh. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I'm like, that is some fucked up shit. And it's like, it's not even like you lost them. It was just like you had them and now you don't have them.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just some bad shit. Some really bad shit.
That's a kick to the sack.
And so we probably spent 45 minutes looking there. And this is the point when I find out that there was an act. I'm like, how much line was it? He's like, well, it was tangled up. I'm like, well, how much line was there to start? He's like, maybe 100 feet.
And then that ball implodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which and where this was like, so we were fishing in like 70 feet of water most of the time while we were drifting, but we were right at the edge. So we were in
the deep water.
We were in 150 feet and like 2 minutes before we were out in 180 before we came into the flyers and the fish was cruising at 150. So even if he like went back to where he was comfortable, but
yikes.
Yeah, if only there was like a note on the ball. Some dude in Japan in a couple of years will just send us, the ball back with a...
Or maybe you'll hook them
LT
again and it'll be
Marine.
125 inches next year. And then you'll have to shave your beard. And then it'll be the most legendary story ever.
Yep.
Probably not, though.
So the funniest part was we went back and kept fishing. I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? We just have...
We have no harpoon.
No, we have a toy harpoon with a jet ski line. Or a water ski rope. I keep saying jet ski line. But yeah. So day 2, we grabbed my harpoon off my boat and we got another harpoon from the Skid JJ and went to Home Depot because it's like Saturday night at like 9:45. Like, so we got, whatever. 800.
Spool of hemp.
Yeah, well, dude, the amount of money. We went to Dick's Sporting Goods and we got 4 jet ski lines. I mean, that shit is strong. You can pull a husky kid out of the water. You can hold a tuna. But no, the amount of money they get you for line at Home Depot. But,
It's insane.
No bueno.
But so we got 2 usable setups. So I was like, that was, and I know you've talked about it in the past, but like when you go on someone else's boat, like how you like to maybe go down a day before and just like make sure everything's right. Because this was totally a situation of like, doesn't matter how much you know, or if you're doing it right, or if you're catching them or whatever. If you just don't have the right gear, like if you tuna fish enough, you're going to get in situations where like you don't always need 2 harpoons, but when you do, you need 2 harpoons. And you don't always need 3 long gaffs, but when you do, you need 2 or 3 long gaffs.
Yeah.
I know you have a story about this year with sort of or December as well, with sort of the same situation. But, we had 1 long gaff that was bent out and 2 like bass gaffs that were bent out. But if we had a second long harpoon, or we had 2 long gaffs, the whole story, or we had enough dart line
Probably
on,
would have got them.
all of those things, it's frustrating when it's just gear. It's not even like you didn't get the bite or you didn't land the fit, you didn't do everything. It's just you have gear.
Or you ran them over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But when you just don't have something,
when
it sucks.
When it's just gear.
Yeah.
It's like,
And we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's been there.
and it's, it's one of those things. It's hard, okay, you spent X amount on your boat, you spent X amount on your depth finder, you spent X amount on your rods. It is kind of one of those things that's like, oh, do I need 2 $400 harpoons? And do I need
What are the odds we're going to need another harpoon?
Yeah,
Haven't needed another harpoon all year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know even when I started fishing with you guys, you were like hesitant to want to have like both harpoons rigged or whatever. And like literally now, at least on line shy, now we're just like, keep them all rigged. Have 2 harpoons rigged. Like standard protocol when we hook a fish is like as soon as it's calm enough to do so in the fight, we have a harpoon and a long gaff up front, a harpoon and a long gaff in the back.
Yeah.
And like, tail ropes with each basket of dart line. So it's like you have 2 setups of everything ready to go forward and back on the boat. I mean, it's a center console, but forward and back. So like if the fish presents forward, if it presents in the back, like you have all your opportunities and ducks in a row. So when that last like chaotic minute happens,
And that's just it. The chaotic minute. Sometimes it's chaotic 8 seconds.
oh yeah, right.
It's like the dart's in them, you break them off, it's not a good shot, grab the other harpoon quick. Like that type of shit happens.
Oh yeah.
Or he comes up kind of green, you get 2 tail gaffs in him, he kicks both of them out of our hands, which happened, I think happened to us at least once this year. The thing just freaks out and both tail gaffs either go with him or whatever. In December, we had a fish take a gaff. We didn't have another long gaff. And the thing's just like there and it's rough. And we like couldn't grab him because we had 2 6-foot gaffs. And, the next day it was like, all right, we got 2 8-foot gaffs, the backup big gaff, 100%. You live and you learn.
Oh, yeah.
And the only way you learn is to have the heartbreak, unfortunately. Like people can tell you need 2 500-foot dart or close.
I like triple the depth of the water.
Yeah, that you're normally fishing in. But for us, off the edge in some of those places, it's 300 feet.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Like your max depth that you could be fighting in,
Right.
triple that. So at least 600 feet.
In
200
theory.
feet off the edge is the average.
Right.
Then you go to the east, it's deeper, but
Yeah. I don't think we have 2 600-foot baskets.
not anymore.
No.
Cutting back. Like
But we have at least 2 300-foot baskets at this point.
Definitely by the end of this season, I remember we were starting to think about like, we should probably fathom out these baskets and see how much line we actually have left.
Yeah.
You catch 40 fish and cut back the harpoon line, cut
8
back
feet,
the harpoon line.
8 feet or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, right.
That could be 100 feet
Right.
pretty quick.
Right.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it makes for a great story, but that sucks. It's when it goes down like
The good
that.
thing is that he will have 2 good harpoon
Oh, yeah.
setups and 2 tail gap
And no one
setups
got hurt.
forever.
Yeah.
Like to have something like that happen
Yeah.
in December with 2 people on the boat. You got
Well,
sharp objects flying
so-
everywhere and lines everywhere.
Yeah.
It was honestly, it felt very slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
funny.
because you've done it so much.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, so it was funny because I don't know. So in the lesson, I'm just thinking about things that were said and happened in the moment. But he's like, yep, just another day in the office. And I was like, for me, but I'm like, I don't know what's going on the other side. Like when me and you fish, like literally we'll land a tuna and like a lot of the times the end game's pretty damn quiet.
Yeah.
Like nothing needs to be said. We know where we're going, what we're doing, what we're reaching for, but so whatever, the very last second, another thing, like first guy. So I would say proper planning prevents piss poor performance, and we didn't have enough proper planning. There was a couple things in the end game that created issues, like with the way the fish was pinwheeling and where we were. One of those throws on the fish was when the fish was coming into the boat.
Oh,
so really, like with that position, if the fish is pinwheeling counterclockwise coming into the boat, your best time to make a dart shot, if you're a little bit questionable if you're going to actually hit the fish, is when that fish is coming out and away. Because now he's coming away, you miss behind. It's no big deal. You got
the entire
30 seconds to regain your composure, get your harpoon back, make sure that, dart's still on, comes out and under, and now you got your chance again. Well, the fish was up and high, and I'm like, stick him, not really thinking like it's a makeable dart shot. So like 9 times out of 10, if you're making that shot, no big deal. You got the fish. He's harpooned. Mm-hmm. But when you miss and he's coming into the boat, now you're in that situation.
Driving right into that dart line.
Yeah. So that was one thing that like in my head, like I never really thought about it. I mean, I don't know. We probably talked about it, but usually it's just like if you think you're going to hit the fish, you throw the harpoon. If you don't think you can hit the fish, you don't throw the harpoon.
Yeah.
It's sort of like in my head how like we usually operate. But definitely coming out away is a best time to throw, because if you miss, you got all that time to,
or
regain.
Like it's tough on his boat in particular, because you're midship and you got the wheelhouse steering area right there on your left side.
You can't get on that side of like the guy on the rod to really throw. So you're kind of throwing under the rod at the fish, which is a little awkward.
So that boat, you really only have one side that you're able to throw
coming out.
Like having a center console or having a down east boat, you
can get on the other side of the rod.
The other side. So you could, if he is going counterclockwise, you can throw on the other side, but you have to wait until the line just that angle, so you're throwing behind him still as he's coming around in the circle. Never throw in front of the circle.
No.
Ever.
And then
unless you're absolutely sure you're gonna smoke.
Right.
I still have trouble doing it. I'd rather wait an extra half a second just as it gets by and then poke them.
I wait
sometimes when they're coming towards you, get those like you have the harpoon angled this way and he's coming in and you just like bury it down to the barrel.
And they push themselves.
Okay. So if he's like gonna hit the side of the boat and eat the paint, totally get it. But like any type of depth, I feel like you're playing with fire.
Yeah. Then the next point is, so like there was a little bit of confusion right at the end game where it's like, get a gaff in him. And I did say like at one point I remember saying, I'm like, tail gaff, get a tail gaff in him. And I kind of watched him. He like had the like gaff like sort of middle of the fish and he like reached a little further. The first guy with the gaff like put a gaff in him. Like, I might have said tail gaff, but I meant like, get a gaff in him wherever you can.
If his head's at you, gaff his head.
Yeah, gaff anything you can. More points of contact. Like landing a tuna is like climbing a ladder. Like if you can have 6 toes on the ladder, touch all 6 toes.
Yes.
But and then you get another gaff in him, and that one maybe you get in the tail so you can get it up, and then one guy holds 2 gaffs, and you get a tail rope on him. But
at the end of the day, just gaff him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
If you're able to pick a spot, situational obviously, but like head, butthole, and tail are the 3 best spots in my opinion to grab them. You're not gonna do a ton of damage to the meat.
Or if you get a 90 incher up in 4 seconds, like that if you tail gaff him,
he's gonna go.
It's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Tit fins is a good spot too, especially for smaller fish.
Yeah.
Right there's like no meat wasted at all, like between the throat and the tit fins. What about you? Lessons learned?
Lessons learned this year. The only fish that I would say we lost that sucked, which I told the story in the beginning, the first episode.
Yeah.
With when we tangled the harpoons and stuff. Just whatever you possibly can do to not allow the person driving the boat to leave the wheel, if possible, the better. Like that day we got the real big one. You know, there was a couple times that we could have definitely lost that fish, but it was like our guys were like petrified to get on the rod.
3 guys is really like the best, especially if you hook into that sea beast where it's like you need to do everything you can to get them when you can.
Right.
You know, and like you say, if you need one guy to stay on the rod to put as much pressure on him as you can, you need one guy to be driving the boat so you can like aggressively maneuver. And then sometimes when that fish, you know, you got those blackback opportunities, or, you know, even just to swap out on the rod to keep a fresh arm going.
Yeah.
And, you know, and have someone free to harpoon the fish when that, you know, quick little, you know, you might have, you know, the fish that you were talking about, we had, you know, 3 or so opportunities where you have like that 1 second, 2 second window where you catch up to him blackback. We had it happen 3 or so times.
Yeah.
And I think he threw once or twice.
One of them I felt like I should have hit potentially. At least back. And the other two were kind of like, we're just trying whatever we can because we knew it was huge.
Right.
I think we actually only threw twice.
Yeah. It wasn't too many times.
And then I think 1 or 2 other times we just got close to it and we started realizing like what it was doing.
Yeah.
Which what it was doing was when we got within 12 feet of it, it would just turn and go under the corner of a boat and try to break himself off.
Yeah, he would just turn in crazy rush. I mean, there's probably, I don't know if the camera made it that long.
No, it died.
I think it died, but so it's lost to just our minds now. But it was, there was, you know, pretty much we're backing up at like it's pretty much as fast as you can back up. We'd catch up to the thing blackback, and then there'd be like a puff of diesel smoke. Taylor leaves the controls, throws, and then back in a big puff of diesel smoke. And
to go forward.
To go forward, because the thing would, you know, crazy, you know, it'd be like just docilely swimming away. And then just as like it would get to the point where he's close enough, he's already like banking and just like launching at the boat. So there was this like little split second where, you know, I'm keeping his head up and we're backing down on him. And then he goes neutral and throws. And then like he's already running and you have to like floor it and put him forward. It was
makes for a fun end game though. I mean, it's not fun in the moment, but then afterwards it's.
But that's what we were saying. The lesson to be learned about that is if we had 3 people, you know, fishing, or a guy who was on the rod and I could have been throwing the harpoon and Taylor could have been driving, you know.
We may have landed.
When you have.
Granted, we got him.
Oh, yeah.
We may not have got him and been like, shit. Like if we just, you know. Or if I left the controls, threw it, and then he went under the corner. Like at one point you loosened the drag because you went under the corner so aggressively. Yeah. But
that's one thing I learned this year too, was like, you know, drag on the fish doesn't always have to be linear up. Like, you know, we talk a lot about getting the drag up quick and getting the higher drag pretty, you know, relatively quickly. Once he like is somewhat settled down, he's not doing crazy runs, you know, we're up pretty close to strike or the button. But like, you work it up, but then all of a sudden the fish starts doing some weird coffee, shaky head thing. It's not the end of the world to get back down for a little bit while he's doing that one crazy run. And as he's nearing that like smooth point of his run, like after he does his crazy beginning things, like I'll creep the drag back up a bit, you know, and you kind of get a little bit more weight on him and like at the tail end of his run, like slow him down. And then see how he reacts. And, you know, a lot of times you keep that drag up, you kind of slowly pull him around, and now he's kind of coming in towards you. And sometimes he just stays calm with that heavier drag. Well, he starts getting crazy again, you can back down
it off a little bit.
I relate it to, you know, like cupping the spool on a spinning rod and a bass.
Right.
You know, like if he's peeling your hands off and you're letting him go, and then like, you know, he's settling, you can feel the tail pump. And you kind of like cup the spool to give yourself a little bit of extra leverage, a little bit of extra pressure. It's the same thing on the 130s. Yeah. It's just harder to feel because you don't have the butt in your armpit or on your hip.
Right.
You know?
And always, like, you and I have the same rule of thumb as we only increase the drag when he's going out on his pinwheel.
Yeah.
Like, we know we're going to have to go higher and higher and higher to land the thing. It's like when he's taking line is when we're putting drag up, which is kind of, to some people might seem scary, but like we're thinking line angle. The hook placement is in its best location, most likely.
When he's going away from you,
especially with a circle hook. So if he's going away from you, put the drag up a little more.
Even if he's not hooked in the mouth, if he's going away from you, you at least have a shot of it firing out and grabbing him in the mouth.
Right. Which we've had.
One other thing we do kind of naturally, I guess, is, earlier in the fight, take him run, 2 runs, you get on top of them, you got a good angle, your drag's kind of, at strike, just below strike. When they do that turn at you, I'll leave the drag. Like if you have to clear that slacker, just get caught up with them quick. As soon as I start coming tight again, I sometimes back the drag off just a little bit.
Yeah.
So just in case that, when he made that turn, if that line angle's over his head or under his head, you're not putting 42 pounds right back on the hook. Because you're going to like 12 to 18 pounds when you slack up. Call it that anyways.
Yeah.
Obviously not
You're
exact.
probably getting a bow.
Yeah, you're getting a slight bow, and then you start loading again. And before it starts to like be at full load, before the drag comes off, that's when I'll creep it back a couple pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes a huge difference, especially with circle hooks, to not get in front of the fish.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Especially in the beginning of the fight. You really got to like almost hang back sometimes.
Yeah.
Like hang back, almost sometimes let him get a little bit in front of you. Like if he's going alongside of you, you almost want to like let him get out and a little bit in front of you.
Right.
To keep the line angle right and then pivot the boat with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I feel like too early in the fight, if you kind of like
Get in front of him.
And his face is at you, you have a really good chance of pulling the hook
100%.
with any hook.
Yeah.
Any hook.
Agreed.
100%. Yeah, like, if you're in a fleet and you're trying to like direct your fish away, sometimes you got to get in front of them a little bit, but again, you don't want to get in front of them so much that now like you have to go around the fish.
Right.
Slash, if you do get in that situation where you have to go like kind of get back down sea, like you got ahead of the fish.
Yeah.
Usually if you got ahead of him slow enough that he's kind of still fading away, just don't, if you feel like you can't come back around and let him get back out, don't get in a hurry to get back down sea on him. Kind of take your time and just go really slow if you get in that. Because if you can go slow enough, you're going to maintain somewhat of that line angle where he's going away. And now you're back down sea and hopefully he can just keep on his pinwheel. But if you get in a rush to get back down sea, now you pull the line
Raking the line over
rake
his
it over his
teeth, too.
teeth or around the top of his head. And in any situation, it's not a safe maneuver at that point,
In hindsight, on that big one we talked about that we chafed off, the potential beard cutter. It was just kind of situational because the way he ran down the fleet, but there was one moment in time where I got ahead of him. And I got ahead of him when he was going underneath you.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I floored it.
Yeah.
And like he was like back here as he was coming by there, transom, and then he stayed again. Then I came back. That's what fucked up.
Oh, 100%. And like you could almost see it like in hindsight, like I can just picture in my head, we kind of got ahead of him. And like as he was coming under, he like had drawn like a big belly in the line. And then like he like
Did a circle under us.
180 underneath.
Yeah.
And like because he got underneath and saw something he didn't like and he went and
Yeah.
That was the
And did,
weirdest thing because your rod was going past us. I was like,
and then it
we're
was
good. Like we might get tangled once.
Yeah.
And then it was like all 3 rods.
all
Like,
of a
oh
sudden
my God.
it's like straight back going backwards.
Yeah.
And he drew a figure 8 under the water pretty much with the line like a ribbon twirler.
Yeah.
He
And
really
just
did.
swam back through it and lassoed his tail.
But anyways,
That would be my lesson learned, I would say, to stay on that same topic of don't get ahead of them, especially with circle hooks. Like keep that angle so you have that perfect angle, whether or not it's in the corner of his mouth. Don't get ahead of him. I would have definitely not done that. In hindsight, I definitely would have not done that.
It's hard though because it's always these like split second decisions that like are just now you're
You have
there.
to.
Yeah,
You just make the call.
oh yeah, and
sometimes
of them,
you can feel it. Too.
Oh, yeah,
That's the
you're like-
worst.
You're like, I know this isn't right, but I don't know what else I can do in this situation.
Yeah, like it's either that or something happens that the fish did,
Right.
And you're like, odds just went down 20%.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and we've all done it where we're talking to each other on the boat without the customers
You're
involved.
like,
We're like,
that one's not
probably not going to get this one.
Yeah.
And after like what just happened,
Yeah.
or we're probably going to pull the hook now.
Yeah.
You know, because of either a weird slack situation or a weird free spool situation, or you didn't set the hook great because he ran at you or something weird. He's coughing a lot. It's a sure sign of like when he's doing the whole like the rod tip shit. It's like, oh my God, I can't even look at it. Nightmares are made of right there.
Yeah.
What's the next topic? Goals. Do we want to
No,
do that?
morph into hunting and then do
woods.
our goals for both. Morph into the woods, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you've had the most epic season.
Yeah.
I've had my first ever.
You had your first
It's
ever.
not, I wouldn't even call it a season. First ever 2 months of hunting.
How many
of getting
sits did you do? Roughly. You don't need to logbook it, but 10,
No, a little more than that. 12, 14,
12 to 14.
somewhere in there. Yeah, I saw
Not a lot of time
I
for
saw
what you
deer.
saw.
Probably half, about 50% of them. I at least saw a deer, and I could have shot a deer 3 of the times. One of them
Including
was,
the one where you killed your buck.
yeah, that's including that one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm pretty sure I almost killed that deer, and then 3 days later I did kill that deer.
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't fully know because I blacked out because it happened so fast. I mean, I can explain my story first.
They were just pissing and shitting
everywhere. So
They were just pissing shit everywhere.
It's like, what?
So,
Were they bucked? I don't know. They were pissing and shitting and pissing.
so they're talking about my text message to them after I killed my first deer because so much happened in the dark without me being able to see what the hell was going on other than hearing them pissing and shitting underneath me.
Well, you basically went into the buck nest and were just like, I'm a hot dough. Like,
Pretty much
that's basically what
what I
happened.
did. So my first hunt was like, I didn't even buy camo until the beginning of October, I don't think. I got my camo and I hunted like 2 days later. First time ever sitting in an afternoon. I had 2 cameras. I saw the buck that I wanted to kill the first afternoon sitting there right before dark, kind of like 70 yards away. And I saw 2 doe, the first sit I ever sat. Then I went like maybe 2 times without seeing anything. And then I waited like a week. I waited until the first like cold snap, which was like the 2nd of November maybe. And first cold snap I went out. And you know, as a new hunter, like you got these like calls and like you just want to try shit because you like have no idea, you know. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna try doing the what's the name of that call?
The doe
The can,
bleat box.
the can or whatever, the green, the can. You know, the doe bleat.
Hit the can.
Hit the can. So I'm like, I'm just gonna hit the can. I'm gonna wait until like the perfect quietest moment of the morning, and hit the can because I was hunting kind of near a fairly busy
November
road.
6th.
Was it the 6th?
Yes.
So I was like, I'm just gonna hit the can and see what happens. And I knew that stuff can happen quick the minute you call. Like I, read all about it. I heard you guys talking about it. I heard other people talking about it. I'm like, you could call and then a deer could like be right there. So you don't want to call crazy hard, crazy fast because something could be there close. Yep. So you may want to see first and then kind of get a little heavier into the calling, whether it's rattling or whatever. So I hit the can and I literally turned the can over and didn't even have time to turn it back. And I could hear a deer coming out of the woods. And where I was hunting, it was like 25 yards, probably 28 yards. And from there on, it was so thick you couldn't see. So like when something was there, it was like within shooting range. So I hit the can and like I'm getting ready to dump it in my bag, and I had it set up so it was like on one of my zippers so I could just let it go in my bag and quickly grab my bow. And I heard it literally that fast. I like let it down. I got my hand on my bow at that much time. It was like, and then hand on my bow, and he was already at like 16 yards, probably 17 yards on like my shooting side but kind of behind my tree, so I could still get a shot pretty easily. And he stopped, and now he's like smelling. And the whole way he ran to me, his face was like on the ground, like trying to smell the doe that was not there, but he thought was there. So I like get my bow off the hanger, and like I get my release on, and he's still kind of there, and he's smelling, and like he's standing there like perfect, quartering away, like broadside for the most part, and facing towards the back of my tree. I'm like, oh, and I saw he had decent antlers, and I'm like, this thing's gonna get shot right now, because my first deer ever, like within shooting distance. I'm like, this thing's getting killed. So I like start to put tension, like I'm gonna draw back, and then he takes like one kind of half jump behind me now over this lay down. Now he's behind me on the other side of the lay down. Now he's on my bad side off my right shoulder, and I'm like, shit. But I knew there was one more shooting lane, like if he went maybe 15 more degrees on my bad side. And I knew he was going to walk up this little hill. And I was like, all right, maybe I can draw back and then kind of sneak around and get a shot. And I didn't practice enough, like sitting in my stand of like my bad side shooting, like what I had to do to be able to get that shot off, which in hindsight, I'm going to do that every single time I set up a new stand, or potentially even every time I sit in a new stand. And so I get this idea, like by watching enough videos and shit, that people like may draw back and then get situated where they want to be and take a shot, which in hindsight, I should have turned all the way around, got my body squared up, then drew back and shot. So I drew back kind of facing away from him, and then tried to turn my body, and then realized I couldn't because of the way my arm was, in the way that the stand was only so big. So I get my shoulder around, and my elbow is like against the tree now. I'm like, I realize, oh shit, I can't get my body all the way around and make a shot. So now I need to, and he's sitting perfectly in my last shooting lane, right clear as day, still quartering away slightly. And I'm like, okay. So then I go to let down, and like as I'm letting down, I'm turning because I could see he was looking away from me a little bit. And I let down, and then I go to put tension back, and like as I let down, he turns and looks like right at me because he heard my arrow like make the tiniest bit of rattle. He's looking at me. I'm now, which I shouldn't be looking at him eye to eye, but now I'm looking at him eye to eye, and I'm standing still, but I'm like sideways, and he can profile me in the tree.
Yeah.
Doesn't blow, doesn't like go crazy. Kind of does like a medium speed trot off over the hill. And I was like, did I just screw myself? Because now I'm thinking, like, was that the deer I wanted to kill? Has he now seen me? Is he ever going to come back? Do I need to move my stand? Like, I'm thinking, like, the worst case scenario. So then, fast forward.
To the 6th. I was incorrect.
I went to your house that night. Well, yeah, I went to your house and walked a long distance to the stand and hunted
our property,
that area.
Yeah.
And, you were like, yeah, there's this 6-pointer that like you can first deer. He's like, kill it, you know? And it ended up not being the 6-pointer, but so I end up seeing a deer getting ready to come in.
Taylor and I both sat
here.
I sat
that
in one
night.
I sat in one stand, he sat in another stand, and basically like
we knew there was this deer bedding close to us.
By. Yeah.
Finally see a deer like wake up at like, well, at least stand up at probably like 5 o'clock.
It was like half hour before sunset.
Yeah, 5:30 probably. And so I'm like, yeah, finally. So like I know where he's going because he wanted food. So I know where he was kind of gonna go. So I get my bow, and I'm like getting situated because like he's pretty far away. So I wanted to be like ready to go by the time he got to me. Keep in mind, this is my first year ever bow hunting. So people
hunting in general.
Well, I've shot like birds and stuff,
hunted,
but like not big game, whatever, medium game, whatever you want to call it. So, anyways, so I see the deer. It's walking towards me. I got my bow, and I'm waiting until he kind of gets somewhat in my range before I can turn and draw back. And I see him kind of stand up, and I just got my bow and put it in front of me, and I'm like still my back's to the tree with my bow in front of me, and he's kind of on my bad side shoulder again. and I hear like a couple twigs move above my head, and an effing squirrel. If anyone's listening to this, someone has to tell me if this has ever happened to you.
No.
I'm wearing a camo hat. I'm wearing a camo hat because we're in an area that I don't need to wear orange. Anyway,
It was archery season.
yeah, archery season. So all of a sudden, I feel something hit my head, hit the front of my cap, hit my bow in front of me, and then like leaps off onto the ground. A squirrel fell. I don't know if he fell out of the tree looking back at it, or if he thought I was part of the tree and thought I was a branch. But a squirrel literally went ka-dum, dum, and it was loud. Brian thought I shot at the ear.
Yeah, I mean,
He landed like on my quiver, which was still on my bow. It was like kaboom! Like it sounded like I released an arrow.
Yeah,
it was loud. So I didn't want to turn and look back at the deer because I'm like, he's looking right at me. I can guarantee it. And so I just waited a little bit. I'm like, dude, I texted him. I'm like, a squirrel just landed on top of me. And even Weber was like, dude, no way that happened.
Yeah.
A squirrel landed on top of me. And come to find out, the deer never heard me, right? Didn't he like go around and just make a little
I think
scrape?
he heard you. You never came out to the plot,
No,
to the food plot.
he never came out. But that was messed up. So then 2 days later, I'm talking to you and I'm like, should I just like go back in my stand and just, yeah, hell yeah, just go back.
Yeah.
Like there's more deer or whatever.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So Taylor's first year this year. This was my second season hunting. Ben's been hunting for many years. Our other friend Jeff, who's been on the podcast, has hunted his whole entire life. Neither one of you or Jeff has ever heard of a squirrel falling on someone's head. A.
No.
And B, like level
While you're getting ready to kill a deer.
while you're ready to kill a deer. But like back to like going into your spot too quick or whatever.
Yeah.
You're definitely aggressive.
Yeah. I mean,
You're aggressive.
so I don't use trail cameras, so I just think of myself as a trail camera.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid to hunt the same spot 5, 6, 7 days in a row.
Yeah.
You know, not to start talking about my story, but I generally will find the deer I'm hunting by sitting in my spot. I'm like, oh, there's a nice buck. I'll shoot him.
Yeah.
And like, so 1 week this year, I started seeing the buck that is laying down the good sign in the area that I'm hunting. It's a nice, big, wide, tall 8-pointer. I see him at 50 yards. Next day I see him. I'm like, he's going to come my way. There's a scrape right at my stand. Next day I see him come through again. He kind of takes the same path. I'm like, all right, I got to move. I've seen him twice. So I moved up like 20 yards. That day he comes through 10 yards further out, little bit of shit in front of me. But I saw the deer. I sat, 5 days in a row in the same spot.
But
And I'm still seeing deer, sometimes it matters. Maybe it doesn't. If you were really into, trying to shoot one buck that you have on camera, is it the best tactic? Probably not. But if you're just trying to see what's out there and shoot deer in general, I mean, I don't think it's going to...
Go hunting.
Yeah,
As long
go
as
hunting.
it's good wind potentially for your spot, right? For where you think you're going to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice if you have like a dead zone of woods. Like one of the spots I hunt, I have a swamp that kind of goes behind me. It's like water, not even swamp. It's borderline a pond, like a reedy marsh. Like for the most part, I don't think the deer are going to be coming from over there. So like if I have 50% of my winds, like, and then there's like kind of like office park and stuff. So like if you have a spot that like half of the winds are going to be fine. But how many times
Even
do you get
in the morning.
How many times do you get in your stand though, and you're like, "Oh, it's a northeast wind today. That's perfect for this spot." And you sit down in your stand and like
See nothing.
Well, no, but the wind's going the complete opposite way in your spot. And sometimes you find that like just because of the way the topography is in that area, the wind is opposite in that one spot.
Or the same almost every time.
Yeah.
Like the first spot I hunted this year, it was like, it seemed like it was south wind, didn't matter what it was. Always south
Let
wind.
me circle us
But
back.
yeah,
So to say, Taylor and Ben started talking about whether you should go back into that spot
Right.
or not.
So then-
Ben is aggressive. Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Taylor's still learning. I'm still learning. / am definitely less aggressive.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. So I went in 3 days. I waited a full 3 days. So I went in 4 days after I had that encounter of that deer when I barely got my call in my bag and he was like underneath me. So then I go in thinking, all right, I'm going to go to the same spot. It's slightly different wind. It was mostly northwest, went to more like east, northeast, which was better for me in that spot. And that morning, the wind actually was the way it said it was going to be, but that's because it was not coming off of higher ground. It was like coming from lower ground. So I think it was pushing up and over that hill that was behind me. Anyways, so I decided, you know what? I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not calling. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sit and see what happens. So I literally got in my stand in like an hour or so before shooting light. And I get set up and I'm like trying to sit still. And I hear a deer coming out of the woods. I'm like, oh, sick. Deer's coming out of the woods. Can't see anything, pitch black. And I can hear his antlers like hitting little twigs and stuff coming out. I'm like, oh, it's a buck. I can hear him. And he comes and like kind of, your mind starts playing games with you, like distance wise and where he is. Like you feel like you hear him.
You just start seeing like morphing black blobs.
Yeah.
And
this
like
is my first
like,
time.
is that a deer? Nope, that's a stump. I'm like,
First
that's
time.
a deer. Nope, that's also a stump.
First time experiencing in the dark, no wind, really noise at all. Yeah. It was so quiet. Even the leaves, I remember walking. I'm like, they're all gonna hear me, you know. And it was quiet, and I could hear them like they'd walk whatever 10 yards and then stop, and then I'd hear like another noise in the woods walking out. I'm like, is that the same deer? Like, my mind is like blown right now. Next thing I know, I could clearly distinguish there's 3 deer because they were just like in different spots, but it was all pretty close. They're all within like 20 yards of each other. And I hear one go right under me, and I just got like the tiniest bit of light that I could like make out his rack. And I was like, that's a nice deer, but one like under my stand. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I hope they don't smell me or know I'm here before I can get shooting light, because like I probably could have already shot one now. And so this is my second time like really encountering deer. And so he goes under me, and I can hear he's like smelling like hard. And I just like to the tiniest bit of spray in my boot in the morning, some dope piss. And right before I walked in. And I'm like, he definitely smells me, but like, I don't think he can figure out like what I am. And I can hear he's like kind of like scraping the ground, but not really. I can hear him like pissing and shitting and stuff. Like, and I'm like, that's cool. You know, he's like, he knows something's going on. And then I hear another deer come out of the woods. And then I hear a third deer coming out of the woods. I can hear each time their antlers hitting branches. And I'm like, there's fucking 3 bucks around me right now. Like, this is crazy. And they're like circling me. And I'm like, you know, they think I'm a doe, you know, but they don't know where the hell I am. And I get the tiniest bit of light, but still like not enough. I felt comfortable shooting one. And I see one of them that's like, was like medium size, which hindsight ended up being the one I killed. He was like medium, younger deer, but decent. And he like swings around me and goes right in to where like my primo shot would be, which is in the scrape, like right on my good side. And there was one pine tree that I was like afraid to break. Yeah. Tiny little like 4 foot tall pine tree that was like right in his vitals. And I'm like, it was still kind of dark, and that thing was right there. I'm like, I don't want to like wound my first deer ever, which you may not control no matter what. Anyways, right. So I just didn't want that to happen. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to shoot. I'm just going to enjoy it. He walks around, and all 3 of them go up behind me, up and over this like little hill. And I was like, that was sick. Like, I said, like 3 deer under me. I'm like, the morning's probably over. Like, that was it. So then I hear a doe up and over the hill, you know, bleat basically. And then I hear him like flying, like breaking branches and shit, like chasing her around, like right in the other side where I am. I couldn't see what was going on. It was only probably 40, 50 yards from where I was. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, there is a doe in here too, which I kind of knew because I had her on camera. And my other camera goes off, and I can hear it. I heard it vibrate. I felt it vibrate. And I was like, that's weird. Like, it was in a slightly different spot than where they were, but still close to it. And come to find out, they basically chased the doe, I think, into the neighbor's the neighbors that are near this piece of land into their yard, and then the deer circle back to figure out what I was still. So then now I have enough light. This is a long story, but whatever. I have enough light, and I hear a deer come up and over, and I'm like, oh yeah, baby, I'm gonna, here he comes. Like I knew he was gonna circle me again, figure out what I was, and I was gonna maybe get a shot. So I can hear him come behind me, and I'm not moving. And I actually get my hand on my bow, like around my left side, and I hear him. He's like walking. I'm like, he's gonna walk right underneath me. And I look down. And it's this like little tiny like 4-inch long spike buck. And I'm like, oh, like damn, like one of them came back, and it was a little buck. He was probably more like a 4-pointer. He was like this tiny little buck. And I'm like, I can't kill that thing. That's such, like my first deer has to be like a deer, So goes in front of me and he stops, and I'm like, cool, this is the first one like I could kill right now, but I'm not gonna. And this is a cool feeling, And he kind of like trots off, and I'm like, who knows, maybe like another one will come back. And maybe like a half hour later, squirrels start coming down. I'm like, oh, that was the action, And then all of a sudden the squirrels just shoot up the tree, which apparently that's like a thing, which I don't know, you guys have all seen it, but it seems like they kind of like escape when they start hearing them.
Yeah, you can start hearing. I mean, it could be anything, but
Right.
a lot of
They
times,
hear
Potentially could
something,
come
they
in.
seek
a
protection.
lot of times when deer start like moving in, like you'll have all the squirrels running around making their noise, and then you'll hear maybe a little, and then they kind of skitter up.
Right.
And now you don't hear birds, you don't hear anything, but you hear that rustling of
Yeah.
deer moving through.
So that's what happened. I was like, huh. And then I heard another deer come up and over, and ended up going to my left side, and I had like no shot until like one window left, and I just, I mared him, mare, and he stopped, and I let it fly. And he, after looking at the shot, he was like cording away pretty hard, but not like, from what I remember, he was not that bad. It's probably at like I don't know, 20 degrees facing away. But when he ducked and turned into the woods, he went into probably more like a 45.
Yep.
So the arrow went in him and literally got
Hit all of
everything.
them.
Yeah.
Got all of them. And we ended up finding them, but it was
It was
really
a beautiful
cool.
buck.
Yeah.
That was
good.
beautiful first
nice
deer.
little 8-pointer. And I've hunted like 8 times since then. I haven't had, other than yesterday or 2 days ago when that little fawn was like underneath me, I haven't had like an actual encounter with a deer that I could have killed since then. But I've seen him a couple other times, and I have some better ones on camera now, which is cool. So I'm looking forward to like positioning some new cameras and figuring out where the hell the thing lives.
Yeah, figuring out a specific deer.
Right.
Which you kind of started trying,
To
because
do?
you did scout a bit.
Yeah.
A month or two before the season, and
Right.
like figured out like some deer that were in that core area. And
Right.
then obviously everything changed during the rut.
Yeah.
But you were able to like at least start painting the picture of that piece you were hunting,
Right.
which is cool.
So now I have 2 deer in one spot that I'm excited about, and I have 3 deer in another spot, as long as they're not all dead right now from
Other hunters,
December.
cars.
Yeah.
They still have to get through the winter
in the winter.
and the summer.
So-
Yeah.
yeah.
There's still a lot of
Still a
time. Lots of things can
Yeah.
happen.
So it's just good to like find, and I'm in 2 newer areas too, which is cool.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Dion Children Foundation. The Dion Children Foundation was established by the Dion family as a way to bring awareness to rare and ultra-rare genetic diseases in children, such as limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, or LGMD. LGMD is a neuromuscular disease that causes progressive muscle weakness, leading to the loss of ambulation, and eventually affects the heart and lungs. Recently, the Dion family was faced with the heartbreaking news that their son Peter and daughter Maggie were diagnosed with LGMD and are battling this rare disease. The core belief at the Dion Children Foundation is that no child should be left behind. For more information or to donate to this incredible cause and family, please visit thedionfund.org. Where are you at as far as obsession level? Is it tickled your fancy like giant tuna fishing, or do you think it could get to that point, or are you just kind of like it's a hobby, like you enjoy it because you're not fishing?
I think like I enjoy it. I'm probably not as addicted as I was to fishing yet. But I feel like the only thing that's holding me back is the spots.
Yeah.
Is like finding a spot that's easy to hunt, which I know is like almost, unless you live in a spot, it's very difficult to like have a spot that's easy to get in and out of, where you don't feel like you might run into somebody. Where like,
But you don't really need that many. If you find like 3 good spots or 3 decent spots, I mean, it's your year one. So like, not everyone's Brian who goes and walks every single piece of woods in the South Shore year one.
One too, but still, a nice one.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, you pick up 2, 3, 4, 5 spots over the years, and next thing you know, you have 4 good, easy get in. You know, there's a decent run that goes through here. You just have a stand that's there, and you're like, that's the stand I'm going to go sit today. Right. And then hunting is more just like hunting. Yeah. You know, you don't, I mean, depending on how you look at it, like I hunt totally different. I'm just like, I like spending time in the woods. So like, you know, I have, you know, sort of 3 or 4 different locations where like I'll go and sit. Yeah. And, you know, they've proven year after year that I see deer in those spots. And, you know, every tree stand, like I find like you can move it a little bit and like dial it. And there'll be these historic runs that move through. There's ways like you'll find a piece, the way they use that piece, and you dial it in over a couple seasons, and then, you know, you have that stand. It's not going to always be the best stand, but some years that stand heats up again, you know, some good sign pops up in that area, and then they're there. Yeah. But
you don't need as many spots as you think.
I feel like 3 is the perfect number.
Yeah.
3 to 4, depending on like wind and like.
I think it all depends on how much time you have to dedicate to it, and how your season's gone too. Like,
but I like hunt backwards from you. Like you'll put in a ton of time to figure out your spot, which obviously works. But like you'll figure it out, do all your scouting. I'll just go sit in the woods. I'm like, there's some sign. Let's sit here. And then as the season develops, you're like, oh, okay, maybe you really want to be a little bit further over. And then once it comes to gun season, that's when I really do most of my scouting. You know, you might find you're like, fuck, I kind of wish I was a couple of 100 yards over here. But now you know there's this little nest over here where there's a lot of sign and activity, and
your next year.
And you can hunt and scout. That's once my thing. Gun season opens.
Yeah.
You know,
if I'm in the woods, I want to have a gun with me. Yeah. So, or, you know, some sort of, if I'm hunting or doing something hunting minded, like the time I spend in the woods doing it, like I'm also hunting. Even if it's not always the most productive hunting, you like stumble upon, you know, you shoot them walking around. There's nothing more fun than just like, you know, walking, stalking, you know, shooting a whitetail.
It's sick.
But, you know,
I've done it. I did one successful push with a buddy that definitely made me realize that I want it. Like that's probably gonna be my goal going into next year. Like I've only bow hunted so far. The whole muzzle loader thing, like just being able to hunt and scout and like not worry about cameras so much, and just go into a piece and hunt. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I like. Oh yeah. I love bow hunting, obviously, but being a part of several other hunts, muzzleloader hunts and stuff, I can see like loving it.
I think sometimes too, if you hunt a lot early season, like by the time gun season comes around, well, specifically this year for me, I had maybe a 2-week stretch where I saw deer between 30 and 50 yards, like a nice buck that I wanted to shoot, you know, 5 or 6 different occasions, just outside of bow range. And after you've sat like 20 or 30 times in a season, and like you're like still struggling to like have the, you know, stars align for him to see one tree branch and turn this way and zig when he has to zag, and, you know, to then be like, all right, I can have a gun, and like if I see the deer that I want to shoot, like most of the time, you know, there's a lot more, you know, you can push that 30, 40 yard potential bow shot to now you got 100 yards in a lot of locations where you can shoot through that little bit of brush that the deer hangs up behind, and, you know,
and you're more lethal. You're more, you know, if you're accurate, you're more ethical kill, really.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like bow hunting isn't, but there's definitely way more room for error, I feel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The more you hunt, the more you know that it's, nothing's guaranteed. You think you take a good shot, the deer moves, anytime you're shooting, a projectile that's going less than the speed of sound, like, the deer can hear everything that happens. And, from 30 yards out, there's so much time for them to react, at 10, 15 yards out, like, yeah, they can't really jump the string, but you start taking a little bit further shot and like they can move a good 6 inches.
Yeah.
Plus
I found out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I knew that, but it was pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Right?
Plus it's like too, like you kind of lock in on your sight picture right at the end and like you commit in your mind to shoot. So there's like also the lag where like you're kind of frozen on your target and like there's that lag between the time you pull your finger. So you're fixed up right, but maybe in that time, you're focusing on a small zone, but you kind of drift, or the deer's moving right at that time. You fire, you were already 2 inches away from where you wanted to be, and then he ducks a little bit. So there's like a lot of movement that can happen at the end if they're not just stationary.
Release a good shot. Like your goal is that surprise release. So like if you're sitting there like holding the back wall, and that animal's either just sitting there slightly moving, like it's hard to get that out of your head. Like when is this arrow going to leave my bow?
Oh yeah.
But I know I don't want to just smash the trigger and have a horrible shot. Like there's a fine balance there.
See, I don't want to say I'm a snap shooter, but like I have no idea what I do when I shoot deer. I just put the bow up, aim
That's
at them,
how I
and shoot.
felt the first time I
just
ever
like
shot. I'm like, did I just shoot?
the arrow comes up, and when I feel like I'm on the spot where I want, it's just shot. And like, but I'm not like, oh, I'm holding my top pin on here at this spot here, or this one's a little further, so I'm on the second pin. It's just like in my head, I know what I'm doing, but like I'm not even processing what my brain's doing. I'm just like most of the times, if I like run back like kill shots in my head, I'm like, I didn't even see pins in my scope. You know what I mean? I just saw the deer and I shot it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like
That's probably a slightly good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's
the
more
ones
natural
that I get,
for you.
I'm really happy about. The
Right.
ones that you don't
That
get,
you
you're
think.
like, geez, maybe I should have like somehow processed that a little bit more. But I mean, that's how it goes. Everyone has those stories, whether you really get in there and you like dial it in.
A lot of variables.
Yeah.
So you got a few deer this year.
I shot 3 deer. I shot at 4 deer. And I got 2. One of them was just sort of like a Hail Mary that I was like, this is cool because I put a ground stock on. It was just a doe. I showed up to one of my spots and there was a doe out like 3/4 of the way down in this field. I wasn't even going to hunt that day. It was like raining. The rain kind of cleared up and it was like 2, 3 o'clock. I show up and there's just a deer out in a field. And I'm like, it was super windy. I'm like, I think I could sneak up on this thing. I like sneak around. I get downwind on the deer. I get in the woods. I poke out behind this little outcropping in the field and the deer's like kind of working down this field edge. And I like poke out from around it and it's looking straight away from me. And I creep to about 30 yards, but it's straight away. And I'm kneeling down and I'm like hanging out of this taller grass and I like lean, I get in draw and I go, Marp, and it kind of just turns its head and shoulder back. But I'm in like a weird position down and I like tried to catch that shoulder and pretty much I was like looking at its ass, it kind of turned its front part of the body this way.
So you had
so I was like,
shot,
I had the shot, and I'm like, I kind of get over here, and it kind of starts straightening out, and I just like let it fly, and I must have just buzzed right down its side where it was hanging out, and I was like, ah. And I like, it was all slow motion, because like when you're on the ground, I just watched the arrow do its whole trajectory, and I was like, ooh, so close. But it was kind of just like, I threw it out there. So that was a miss, but like, I don't know. I wasn't really that offended. I was like, it was a good experience. I think one of my first few sits, I saw a lot of deer. I was like, I usually get trigger happy and shoot. a doe or something one of my first few sits. I think I did like 3 or 4 or 5 sits with seeing deer. Not really bucks, but like I saw one buck early on through the brush, but like he kind of hung back a bit. The does came through. I'm like, I'll just try and let's try and hold out and like not shoot the does in your spot before you see a buck come through. I don't know, around sit 5 after seeing deer, I'm like, okay, enough of this. Deer comes out and come into draw, 25 yards, put it on the shoulders, and from like what I saw as the thing turned and starts running away, I see like the perfect spot, in my opinion, like right in the lungs, like the blood spot. Not really seeing blood pouring out. The thing didn't act like it was hit. It was it wasn't a big doe. It's like a yearling, 120-pound doe, whatever.
Yeah.
Smaller doe, but turns, 100-pound doe, whatever it was, turns, it runs like 30 yards like you would hope it would do, but not acting hurt, then stops and didn't leave my sight. I can still see him. It's at like 45 yards, threw a little shit, but I'm watching it standing there. I'm like, start wavering. They usually do the stop and waver. I'm like, it's not acting hurt. It's just standing there. And one thing I want to do is I want to get binoculars because like, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but like, I can't see the like, there's just times where you like
low light, especially.
Yeah, I want to be like in that situation. I've thrown up the binoculars and been like, is blood pouring out of this deer or what? But like, I couldn't see that happening. But I'm watching. I'm like, it just doesn't look hurt. It's standing there steady as anything. Not like standing there twitching its tail like it's getting a little messed up. And I'm like, this is so weird. And it was at last light. And then it turns and just walks off, calm as can be. I'm like, it's not stumbling or anything. What the heck? So I'm like, I'll let the thing sit overnight. But everything in me, I'm like, that was the other thing. So I get down, check my arrow, and the arrow looked like crap. There was hair on it, tiny bit of blood. I still don't know what happened. There was hair, blood. It looked like I hit it right where you want to hit it. Next morning, I come back out. I sit in the morning. Didn't see it. Oh, I did. So I sat that morning. I have 2 does come out from right by me. I had a doe come by. This is all one occasion. 2 does come out from behind me. 1 doe is working across the middle, and there was a buck in the same spot, which was the buck that I ended up seeing later in the season. Walked maybe another 5-10 yards, a little thicker, right out in front of me. Doe comes out right underneath me, and I was kind of trapped in by deer. I don't know if I even tried to shoot that doe. Maybe I picked up my bow, I forget. But it came out like right underneath me, and I felt like the wrong gust of wind. Now I had deer. So you talk about wind situations. I have deer on all sides of me. So it's like, what are you going to do? But it got a little bit, I felt like a downdraft kind of come by me, and the deer like looks up, and it was just like, didn't blow or anything, but got all robotic and started walking. At that point, I was about to shoot it. Because whenever that's like my catalyst, once
robotic, and then it goes to the 1 foot stomp, and then you're like, it's done. It's over.
Yeah. And so I was like, it never really, I tried to make an opportunity, but I didn't have enough time to get like squared up, and it didn't run off, but it did like a couple little bounds and always had a piece of brush or something in between. And I'm like, okay, good. It's not going to blow. But I'm like, everything's like, why aren't you blowing kind of deal. And then it cleared. It just got out of sight. And then it just stood there and started blowing. I'm like, mother. So that was my hunt. I get down and I go to look for the doe I had shot the day before. And I'm like looking right where it had hung. It had stood in one place for like 5 minutes. I'm like, if I don't find a big puddle of blood there, like this isn't a good sign. I'm looking. I'm like, what the heck? And a lot of times, like your perception of where you think something is like pretty close, but it's actually like 10 yards different. So like I'm gritting around in this like 5-yard circle of where like I'm putting together that it stood. I'm like, I'm not seeing anything here. And then I'm like about to like give up, and I go like another 10 yards further, and I'm like, oh, there it is. And there's I don't know, about the size of a pie plate, a little puddle of blood with still some moisture. And I'm like, I'm like, it's not what I was hoping for, but it's enough that I'm like,
Enough to be a lethal hit.
yeah. And I'm like, but everything's like confusing. Bad arrow, or not a good covered in blood arrow, which makes me think. And then the way that it acted like it wasn't hurt also makes me think that it wasn't, a super lethal hit. But I find that one puddle of blood, and then I kind of followed the track of the way it like walked off, and I find no blood, but it kind of hung up in another spot, and there was like a little pool of blood there too. And I tried following any further. There was no blood in between those 2 points, and there was no blood that I could find after that point on any of the runs leading out of that piece. And I didn't overly search for it, but I didn't find anything.
Did you just end up shooting low and like brisket hit it or something, or?
I still just don't know, because unless it just had like a cowlick or something where it was. I mean, I don't know. It just felt like I got it, but I either hit it high or I hit it low,
Yeah.
or forward or back. those are pretty much my options. But I don't know. I would like to get one of those shot spotter cameras or whatever they call them. Tacticams.
I was watching those. It's pretty hard to zoom in to really see where you shot them on those. You really need like a 4K camera.
Yeah.
Like something like one of these set up.
Especially for
so that you can zoom in.
Because that's the most frustrating thing. And I know Brian will be able to tell his story where that could be helpful. And, but like, I don't know how almost every deer you shoot with a bow, you're like, unless you see it.
Hit it good?
Yeah. Unless you see it fall, a lot of times, I've dropped quite a few deer with my bow where like, nope, it's dead because it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them too where you're like, it ran off, kind of hurt. And you're like, do I give it 45 minutes or do I give it 6 hours or do I let it lay overnight?
Yeah.
And usually the best answer is, give it a little bit more time than you think. But it would be nice to just
What are you looking at?
be able to go back and.
Is this showing its recording still?
Yeah.
But it would be so nice to be able to go back and actually just be like, okay, I see exactly where I hit that deer. You watch every hunting show out there and like they obviously have cameras rolling and stuff and they shoot it and then they're like, yeah, no, that wasn't a very good hit. Like we're going to let it go overnight, or like, oh yeah, that's the right spot. Like it's going to be dead.
I can't even imagine. I don't want to talk about this too much, but we've only been doing this a couple of years. But trying to add that aspect to your hunt and self-filming, especially like around here in these small little chunks of woods. And
we were just talking about this. Well, sort of. I was thinking
it's hard enough to film like bites and fishing when you have multiple people on the boat in a pretty passive environment for the most part. I mean, like hunting can be as well.
Where your activity is only 20 feet away.
Yeah.
Now do it 60 feet away.
That's just
80
insane
feet away, 100
talent
feet away.
to be able to do. Like some of these shows I watch, like be it YouTube or whatever else, it's impressive what these people get on.
But 90+% of them aren't doing it in woods where we are.
No.
Yeah, it's farmland.
They have a field that they can film.
There's a few though. There's a few like suburban.
Hunting Public guys probably the closest, right?
Yeah, the Seek One guys down
Yeah.
in Georgia. I mean, they hunt all over the place, but
The amount of movement that some people get away with on TV is just baffling.
it's
to me.
insane.
Like, I'm like looking at their stand. They're like 15 feet up in a tree, and you got two guys in a tree 15 feet up, and one guy's moving a camera around on an arm, and the other guy's like moving and swinging. And
Why do you
around.
think that is?
And I'm like, this deer hasn't looked up once. I'm like, I so much as like move in my like fleece jacket that makes almost no noise. And I hear like the lightest ruffle and the deer's like tail up, ears pinned, looking up at me. I'm like, I don't know.
No.
I mean, some days
It is
it's
weird.
Like,
You
some
also
days
aren't
it's like
seeing
that.
you're seeing the highlights. Like how many hunts does
yeah.
it take to actually see something
100%.
like that, and then add years of experience, and you're able to. It's like us tuna fishing, getting bites on film. Like think about trying to get what we have on film now when we first started tuna fishing.
Right.
A, you're not getting that many bites, and B, like you don't know when to film or like when the right time is to like actually make sure you're filming. I don't know.
So let's talk about your season.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah. I still like can't.
So you just got set up saddle hunting this year.
Yeah, I only saddle hunted a little bit. Just I think because of how the season started for me.
Right.
But anyways, this is my second hunting season. And I know you said earlier, like we're still learning. You're always learning. Like
Right.
you're
But
learning. Like
we're still learning. We're still learning major things.
major components.
Right.
of
Not
hunting.
necessarily minor things.
Yeah, like we're not
Yeah.
tweaking and refining like I feel like we are with tuna fishing.
Yeah.
But anyways, so this is going to be kind of a long story, but I think I can do it in like 20 minutes. So moved into this property a couple of years ago. Prior to moving into this property, I had helped some buddies drag some deer out and kind of been around hunting through like Ben, through Jeff, through other guys, Nick. And the first fall that we were here, I saw this buck in the morning going out to my truck. Went out to my truck to get something. I hear a deer in the woods. I'm like, there's a deer in the woods. So I like kind of hang by my truck and I'm seeing a very large deer walk through the woods and pops his head out in a clearing. And it's like I now knowing what I know and actually have been lucky enough to actually kill that deer. In that moment, I was like, that's a fucking huge animal. Like that's a 200 pound plus, like big, heavy buck.
Yeah.
So I have some amazing pictures of him from that moment and texted a couple buddies, been like, this buck is here. If you want to come hunt my property, feel free. So they obviously see the picture. They come over here. They start, trying to hunt the property together, but it's difficult. It's not like it's a big farm. It's a couple acres of woods.
And they go by how many houses?
Exactly. So I had a couple friends hunt that deer, and after they put cameras up, finding a couple more mature bucks, they hunted in and around this property, and one of my friends had an encounter with that deer and missed it with a muzzleloader. And so that was November. Fast forward to I get my bow like January, February, March, somewhere in there of 2022. Did some scouting, 2021.
No, 22.
2022 spring, yeah. Some scouting and all that before the season, but like that was really my big pivot back to charter fishing as well. So like that was my main focus going into that summer, but got into it, killed that little 10-pointer, my first sit in 22, instantly hooked. Had a couple cameras out, wasn't hunting a specific deer. It was just hunting with a couple cameras in the woods just to like understand how they moved
funny,
around.
though, that year, because even just talking to you, I remember I was like, oh, so like you definitely gonna go hunting? You're like, yeah, I mean, I got a bow. I don't know. I guess we'll see when it comes.
That's exactly how I did it.
And he was so sort of nonchalant, like not really even sure if he was gonna get into it, but he had a couple cameras. You're like, I haven't really seen many bucks on camera yet, but like I know there is a good one out there. And then
Yeah.
Did you think you killed that deer?
No, I knew it wasn't. At first, I was like, "It's a giant." I remember texting Ben, it's a giant, because it was a nice buck, like antlers beyond his ears, like decent buck. And it's similar experience to you, is chasing does around, hit the bleak hand, hit a scrape, came right to me, like gave me the perfect shot at 12, 15 yards, quartering away, double lung, done in like 80 yards. And there was it couldn't have been a more perfect entry to deer hunting. It was like storybook shit. Like people that, most people's first deer aren't, 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old 10-pointer, like decent buck.
Mind you, that was your first, or mine, that was his first sit ever.
My first sit ever.
Ever.
So anyways,
Which will come into play
Riley
later in the story.
So 22, So after that happens, it kind of lights a fire, and I buy like 2 more cameras. I'm like trying to scramble. I get permission on a couple other properties, one of which is a family friend that we've literally known since we were infants that happened to be like basically in the same overall core area of where this one particular buck / couple of bucks are. So fast forward to end of November 22. I get this video of that 10-pointer. We call him the Big 10, of that big 10-pointer crushing these 2 rubs over by that other property that I have permission. Like, I have like 5 minutes of Tacticam footage that's just like awesome. I watch it like literally every day. It's sick.
That's not. He doesn't just watch it, guys.
But I got that night. There was a doe on camera and stuff. So like I figured like, new to hunting, I'm like, there's gotta be a hot doe. He's there, yada yada. Wind's perfect for the next morning. I go sit that spot the next morning. Similar to you, I'm like, I'm gonna try blind calling. So I like grunted, I bleated, I grunted twice, and then like I sat back. And it was shooting light. It was just at shooting light when that happened. And that particular buck, the Big 10, comes shooting up the main run that I was sitting on, comes to 20 yards, go to stop him. He like, I was too loud, whatever. And he ends up like bounding and making it so I like split my pins, shot. I wish I could take that shot back. Just didn't feel like 100% relaxed in comparison to like this year, for obvious reasons. But I high shouldered him, non-lethal hit, tracked a little bit of blood. Good friend of mine, our mutual friend of ours, came and helped me track. He's like, that 99.9% sure that deer's still alive. So I finish out the rest of the season. I actually missed another buck. We were calling the non-typical. He was this like bladed, massy 8-pointer that one of my friends was chasing when he was chasing the Big 10 in 21. And then in 22, or in the time between the 21 hunting season, the 22 hunting season, he must have got hit by a car or something and grew weird. And anyways, I had an encounter with him that same season in 22, and I actually had a nice shot at 20 yards and just tried to shoot through too much brush, shot underneath him, clipped a branch and shot underneath him. And then I killed a doe in December. So that was my 22 season. This all dovetails into this year, I promise. So now I'm obsessed. Now I'm like, this is amazing. And with our schedule, with charters and the tails, we have basically mornings and, when we're not, a lot of the tuna tail work is cure time. So there's a lot of scouting time that I put in last year. So, winter 23, spring 23, I put in
just every waking moment.
Legitimately every piece of woods that I could possibly get in a 5-mile radius of my own property, I went in. And found a bunch of sheds. I learned a ton. Just like, I learned so much. Like that was like the best time spent for trying to get a jump start, I think, on hunting in this general area.
Time spent in the woods, it's the same as time spent on the water.
Exactly.
You learn by being immersed in it,
And so I put a ton of time in. And then I had this one spot. I had checked everywhere and I found this decent spot with quite a few sheds. And there was a gut feeling. I was like, I just have a feeling one of those 2 big bucks, either the non-typical or the Big 10 sheds, are going to be in this specific spot. But it's a perfectly legal and accessible piece of woods, but there's nowhere to park there. So I waited for like a drizzly, rainy, overcast day, which through nerding out on shed hunting is like what you want for shed hunting. It just helps them pop out in the leaves and whatever. My wife is on her way to work. I asked my wife to drop me there on her way to work. I jump in that piece of woods. I make it 75 yards into the piece of woods, and I'm like going through like ankle deep swamp and like just kind of these like risey patches in the swamp. and I find a fucking doll head, like a creepy ass doll head. I'm like, how the fuck does a doll head get out here? And so I am looking at the doll head, and then I look up and I knew immediately it was his sheds, and one's hanging in a tree and one's laying in the bed that he was on, this little like high spot in the swamp. Like high five myself. I actually found the match to a big 6-pointer. I had found his shed a couple shed hunt scouts, whatever, before I found the match side. So in that one walk, I think I found 5 sheds, including the match from the Big Ten, both from the Big Ten, the other side of the fork, and a couple of older ones. So I'm stoked. Now I'm fully obsessed with this deer, like fully obsessed with him. And Jeff's kind of like pumping my tires a little bit. He's like, you need to hunt one specific deer. You need to hunt one specific deer. I'm like, all right. So I'm kind of looking at it as an opportunity, like comparing it to tuna fishing. Like we've done it enough. Like, hell yeah, I'd want to just chase 1,000-pounder. If I had the opportunity to just try to hook 1,000-pounder, I'd do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So scouting season, summer, add some cameras to my arsenal. I get fucking dialed on this thing as much as I think I can be, to the point where I'm taking his sheds around with me scouting and matching his brow tines up to rubs, like the rubs that I have him on camera hitting. I brought his sheds to those rubs, watched the video how he was rubbing, and then I was going to all the pieces of woods where I knew he was or thought he was, and was matching those to those rubs to like find what bedding areas he liked to, be in or monitor or whatever. So I did that, and then I got him in velvet through the summer on camera, like some really cool growing his antlers pictures, daylight. Like I have some really cool pictures of him. And I found this one spot with this massive community scrape. Like the licking branch is like 3/4 of an inch, just like gnawed down, like snapped, broken. It's like when I first found it, like I couldn't tell if it was like a massive bed because it was leaved over a little bit when I found it, or if it was a scrape. Then I kicked it open, it was like instantly reeked. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put a camera here, put a camera there, and turns out like that was like his core, from my perspective anyways, his core bedding area. Like that is where he was the king of the woods, at least before the rut, like during the summer, early season, yada yada. So I found that scrape, had a camera on it, awesome pictures, all that. And then fast forward to Prince Edward Island. So Prince Edward Island trip, we leave the end of September, and hunting season in Mass opens in the beginning of October. So right before I leave for PEI, just to fuck with me, / I think it was one of his excursions. Like I nerd out on the Deer Association now, and like it's pretty bad. But anyways, just to fuck with me, the bedding area that's on our property, he goes and trips a camera in the middle of the day in this doe bedding area, like multiple times right before I leave for PEI. And I'm like, and I have a set hung between, like in a funnel between that bedding area and another bedding area. But I'm like, fuck, he daylighted here. I'm like, should I sneak in there and put a stand in there? So like when we get to morning hunts, then I can I have pretty easy access in that bedding area. Then I'll have anyways, I end up throwing a stand up in there right before I leave for PI. I probably blew the whole bedding area out and screwed it up. But anyways, so I'm like, that's probably where I'm going to kill him. Mind you, like I'm still thinking about that scrape area. And I actually brought a friend of mine to that scrape area and was like, don't show anybody this, obviously. And I told him I'm probably going to have an opportunity at this deer here. I just like being cocky / joking / whatever.
/ you saw him on camera
there.
You
saw him on camera there.
You're confident.
I was confident.
And it's where you found the sheds, right?
Yeah, actually, no. I found his sheds in between those two spots. So I have him on camera in this spot. I have him on right before I leave for PEI. I've had him on camera in this spot all summer, basically.
You're 2 miles away.
and they're about 2 to 3 miles away, and his sheds were directly in between. So
Crazy.
It's insane.
Oh, yeah.
And then-
yeah.
So we'll get to that other part in a second. But so I get him on camera. I go to PEI. I have nothing on camera at all while I'm in PEI. 0 mature bucks on camera. Like acorns were like heavy at that point. I'm like, it's all gonna be fucked up. I've heard like everyone who's hunted for a long time, there's a big acorn crop, it changes everything and yada yada. So I'm like just overthinking it. I have no control. All I can do is practice shooting my bow. I brought my bow to Canada with me while we were fishing. Shot a bunch. Every single day I shot.
And a reminder to this whole story, you've already shot this deer.
Yeah, I've already shot this deer.
Right, the year before.
Get back from Canada on October 5th. I just had the picture up. So I get back from Canada on October 4th. I put my bags down. Before I'd left, my saddle gear, all of my gear was perfect. All my hang-ons that I have up were all checked perfect. I had my bow with me in Canada. I get home. I put the bags down. My Reveal app goes off right as I'm sitting down for supper with Claire. And it's him at that scrape in daylight right before sunset, all over that fucking scrape. Like incredible pictures. I'll have George throw some in the preview for this podcast. And I texted, I texted Weber, and I texted Matt, and I said, I'm making a play on him tomorrow. So I get in there super early, and I'm talking like noontime, and it's like 65 degrees. You guys are fishing.
Yeah, we were
Right.
fishing.
You guys are on a charter.
Which day was that?
You didn't end up getting one. It was the day after the 900.
Was that the day we had...
You released one, I think, maybe.
We did release one.
Yeah.
Northeast corner, northwest corner. You got like a 95 incher in the mackerel schools on a
Right.
Tinker Mac.
Right.
I don't know.
So anyway,
I know.
Sounds right.
Sounds about right.
so anyway,
I just remember I was like, I'm trying to remember who it was because the whole day we were like on our, well, never mind. Keep going.
all right.
Yeah, because we came back for the search.
Yeah.
I get in at noon-ish and get there. I had a couple trees in mind, but when I looked at trees in that spot, it was wintertime. So like now you have foliage on there. New hunter, still learning, always will be learning. I see one tree, I'm like, that tree will work. It'll give me a 20-yard shot, 18-yard shot to this scrape. My wind's right for it, whatever. That's the other thing. My wind happened to be right for this spot. For that next day. I was like, yeah, you have to. You can't not. Mm-hmm. So I get up, and the first time ever sitting in a saddle. I practiced quite a bit at my house, but first time ever actually hunting in the saddle. I get up, quiet, clean, perfect. There's a fucking branch like in my main shooting lane at the height that I'm at, but I like the height that I'm at. Because I have this like gnarl on a pine tree behind me. So if they come from behind me, they can't see me. Like they might win me, but at least they can't see me. And I was 90% sure he wasn't going to come from behind me because of the way I always have him coming on in that camera and the way that bedding area is. So I tie a piece of paracord off to that branch. I climb back down. I hitch it off to another tree, flex it out of my way, get back on my tree. At this point, it's like 1:15. And then I look at my phone. I check my cameras on my phone. I go on OnX. And then I like flipped Instagram on because I'm like, it's fucking 1:30. Like I'm not expecting anything to happen till like 6 o'clock.
And it's like 70 degrees.
And it's like 70 degrees out. Like I'm in like I was sweating. I went in like layered appropriately, but then I didn't want to just have a bunch of shit hanging from my tree. So I just like vented everything and had all my shit on and prepped for sunset. So anyway, looking at my phone, then all of a sudden behind me is here, ka-crash, ka-crash, ka-crash. I'm like, the fuck is that? I turn and look, and he's at 30 yards coming straight at me. And he grew this like tiny little tine in like between the tip of his main beam and his like G and his G3, I guess. Mm-hmm. And or whatever. He grew this one extra little tine from 1 year to the next. Still had the same mass and everything. And that was the first thing my eyes saw. Like, I swear to God, that's the first. I was like, that's him. So like, he's coming towards me. He's slightly off my runs. My wind's shooting straight at him, but it's 5 to 10 knots. So I'm assuming it's a pretty straight stream of scent. This is how my mind works anyways. I think I would say it's not swirling or anything up there. It's like a constant 5 to 10 knots out of the southwest, shooting like straight stream. And he like is off one run. So he's not right on my wind. And I put my release on my D-loop underneath my bridle. I like my bow's here underneath my bridle. And as soon as I did it, he stops like 15, 20 yards off to my right shoulder. And I'm like, I can't shoot. My bridle's here. I'm like, what a fucking idiot I am. And he's like, there's no cover behind me. Now it's wide open right here. Like, that's one of my main shots is right there. So I'm like, I can't fucking move. I'm pinned, like absolutely pinned. And then I just hear him go, and he slowly like has his head up, head down, walks my scent to where I tied the paracord off. And he's like, he's right there. He's at like 7 yards at this point. And then I can see his antlers. I see his head turn this way and start sniffing up the tree. And at that point, I undid my release and put it back on the right way. And I'm like, just barely see him out of my periffs. And this is where experience would have been in my favor. You know, like after that, this being so many firsts, it's really hard to control your emotions and everything going on at this point. It's hard to, it's still difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, but like, I'm sure there's people that are listening to this that have been in a similar situation. So I'm fucking shaking, calm myself down, breathing, finally get calmed down. This is probably only like 10 seconds that's gone by. And then, so he's facing this way, do my release. He faces towards me and turns and starts going back to basically the base of my tree. I'm like, now's my opportunity to draw back. So I drew back. I'm at like 7 yards. So I'm like, just put the green dot fucking on his lungs and let it rip. So, but what I didn't, being novice bow hunter, body language and positioning of the deer's body, like I should have just waited like an extra 2 seconds just to like reprocess that in my head. Cause he was like bent, if that makes, like he was like shoulders towards me with his head down and his body was this way. So what I thought was his, like the seam for his vitals was actually way more
4 inches back. Probably.
Yeah, it was 4 inches back to them from where I should have shot.
Yeah.
So I shoot, I see that, and he doesn't kick. He hunches, like from everything I've read, like liver gut shot. Like it was like that reaction. And I just watch the arrow bury to the fletchings and he takes off. So I'm like, you know, excited, but also just trying to control emotions, call everybody, whatever. So we give him several hours. Not enough time.
It was 2 hours, basically.
2 to 3 hours. Not enough time in hindsight. We go in there. Not much blood to track. It's like drops. We get to the trail, figure out where he crossed the trail. And we all like are kind of trying to find blood. There's not a lot of blood. And like, you know, like you said, like you think that you hit him there, but he's really 10 yards this way. So you don't know what run he's on, whatever. We're tracking. And, we found where he crossed the trail, and then we like had okay blood. And then Jeff was like,
we all discussed. We were all like, we should probably back out. We'll go 10 yards further.
So then we go 10 yards further.
And he's right there.
Pops up out of his bed. He would have died right there.
Probably.
And he pops up out of his bed, clearly hurt, like tail tucked, and just like slowly trots down this slope, like basically this bedding slope towards this massive creek in this piece. So we back out, bummed, but like also know he's going to die. And we go back in at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, so now from shooting time, it was 8 hours.
Yeah.
We went back in and started from the beginning.
And tracked until 1 o'clock in the morning until we got to.
We found like the second set of blood.
Yeah, basically. We found like we were on okay blood, like trackable blood, and then it got into some like high stem count stuff, and the blood started to be up higher on like leaves and branches, and it was like impossible to track at night. Yeah. Backed out, went back at sunrise with a buddy of mine, found to where he didn't cross the creek and actually ran parallel with the creek and got us another like 75 yards, which was awesome. Shout out to Pat. Fast forward, another buddy comes back in, friend has to leave. Actually, Dave and Jeff came in and helped me. Got to official last blood, which was like a bedding area. It was like this open clearing. Like it just looked like a buck bedding area, like lay downs, moss, briars all around it. So we're like, which fucking way did he go here?
Yeah.
So we basically check like every main run. Then we're just body searching like one run. I'm like, I've scouted in here enough. I know there's another bedding area down here. Let's go check this bedding area. We go check it and actually found his left side shed from 21 in that bedding area. So we found I already told you where we found his 2 match set from 22. Mm-hmm. This is 2 miles away.
Find his other shed
from the year before. It just goes to show you, like, the sheds could be in someone's backyard. Like, you never know. But anyways, found his shed. So it's like a little bit of a reconciliation prize. At this point, I'm like sick to my stomach. I've had diarrhea for 2 days. Go back, eat lunch, go back in, and ended up finding him.
Yeah.
And he died in a creek, liver shot, gut, salvaged a little bit of meat. His cape was smoked. Obviously it's, everyone who bow hunts / hunts will tell you, like, it's part of hunting. Like you're gonna have moments, you're gonna have kills.
It's all about the effort, though. If you put the effort in, like that buck was worth putting a lot of effort in. 100%. Even the next day, even if you didn't find him that day, we would have been grid searching the following day.
Totally. For weeks and weeks until you found his dead head.
Well, you tell the other story.
Maybe, yeah. So anyway, like, felt bad, but like felt good.
Oh yeah.
And then so yeah, that was first sit again this season.
Accumulatively, you have 2 hours of sitting in a stand-in at this point, and what, like 23 points
of antler. Just insane. So yeah, that deer was really cool. It was just cool to put that much time in trying to figure him out, and then have an encounter with him that first sit.
Oh yeah.
Like, obviously cameras like help
100%.
But like at the same time, it's insane how far it's insane
how
what
far
they do.
Travel. Yeah, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I didn't even include is, like, during fishing season, he effed with me again, like driving to the boat at 3 o'clock in the morning. He's in someone else's yard, like in a spot where I was like, why is he there now? Like, you're completely messing with my head right now.
Yeah, it was one morning we're like all down at the boat, and like we're like, where the hell's Brian? Like, Taylor's getting Fortuna ready, I'm on line shy, and we're like, what the heck happens to Brian? You come down the dock all fired up. We're like, where the hell you been? And he was like, no, I saw my deer. It was in my neighbor's yard. I'm thinking that I probably have to climb down and around through. I can work my way. We're like,
like, dude, it's like August.
It's August and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going tuna fishing.
Oh God. But I don't know. It's just the whole story was cool and super appreciative, and like even more appreciative of similar stories. Like I love watching, reading, and all that. People chasing bucks for multiple years. So anyway, that was my first sit this year. It was just insane. Super heavy, massy buck. He was a 10-pointer. He was like 190 something pounds dressed, just like a beautiful old buck.
No teeth.
Yeah, no teeth.
Gumby.
Yep. So anyway, so that was October. So then I'm like, my season's made. Like, I'm just gonna go hunt now. And there was a few other bucks that are on the hit list, but like I didn't put any effort. Like I knew generally, like, another buck that didn't seem to range quite as far as that Big Ten. So in my head, I was like, I'm just going to hunt closer to my property and just wait for him to like rut through the funnel and maybe I'll get a shot at him.
Right.
So
That happened.
yeah, but I didn't get a shot at him. So I hunted my food plot. Another thing I did too is I put a lot of time into making a clover plot on my property, and it came out pretty decent for first year. But in my head, I was also like, I'd really love to just kill a buck on the plot, like just to like have it work and be really cool. So I hunted the plot a lot. I hunted this other funnel quite a bit. Was definitely more aggressive now that had happened. I was like, I got nothing to lose. Like, let's see how aggressive I can be. And then, so I had one sit on the plot that I passed this little 6-pointer. I got to watch him feed. Actually, I had to have a buddy scare him off the plot so I could get down without spooking him. Had a couple other sits where I saw some small bucks. I didn't see any does in any of my hunts until I killed that doe in November, which I'll go back to. But I didn't see any does at all until I actually killed deer because of does. But the big 4-horn 6-pointer encounter, I was sitting in a funnel, had this small 8-pointer that I'd now passed twice come through this run and basically like proved that this setup that we had like would work. Friend of mine and I both sit this same stand, and we were both worried about them catching movement too easy. It's on like the edge of a power line basically, and you have good cover behind you but nothing really in front of you. So like if you hear or see a deer, like you need to really time your movements perfectly. Right. So 8-pointer comes through, pass him. I have like 2 minutes left of shooting light that same hunt. I'm like, I can't fucking see anything. Like I'm just going to get down before a deer comes in and I have to like worry about being here in the dark when they're there. Lower my bow down, get down from my stand. Said friend has a camera in that exact spot, in that same funnel. I start to walk back out of there, and he texts me a picture of the deer I'm hunting, popped his head out right as I was getting down from my tree. But in hindsight, it was almost like he waited for the young buck to cross the opening. And I swear he must have just been standing in that pine thicket,
watching you get
watching the other side, just watching for movement, getting his light perfect before he crossed. Like it was, I don't know, like you see fish do weird shit trying to escape. Like there's no doubt in my mind that deer knew like what he was doing and was creating as safe a passage through that funnel as he could. You know, being that there was no doe there or anything. Right. There was nothing there to lure him through. Right. So, like, he's going to, be wary. So, anyway, almost had a shot at him there. Friend of mine's hunting a deer around the same area, that big, the non-typical, which grew back typical this year. We started calling the bladed 8 this year. Just like a real tall rack. What I had he was bachelored up with the Big 10 in August when I saw him in the yard and then put a camera back there. I had them both in velvet back there. Yep. When I showed you guys the pictures of him, you're like, I'd be chasing that other one. I know. It's like way bigger.
Way cooler.
Say, he's arguably bigger and better than the Big 10.
Definitely. So, but like, it was one of those things like, I was dead set on hunting the Big 10 and Weber was hunting the bladed 8. Right. And
I feel like the bladed 8 was way more mythical though.
Definitely.
No one could figure out.
Hated cameras. You get them on camera one time, then never again on that camera. Yeah. And you like and then you could move it to the other side of a funnel or like just, instead of facing north, face it south on a tree and then you'd get him, but then he wouldn't be on it again. It was so bizarre. So anyway, Jeff was hunting that deer pretty hard. He had a couple opportunities at him this season. And just never had a shot. I think he had a shot at him the year before or 2 years before with a muzzle loader, but didn't get him. I can't quite remember. This is the one that I missed in 22, shot under him. So anyways, fast forward to November, I'm sitting the food plot, my property, and who shows up with a hot doe but the bladed 8-pointer. and I'm watching him from 80 yards away with this hot doe. My conditions are as perfect as I could possibly get for how the situation unfolded. I actually heard him come through the swamp in the morning, skirted me in the morning, then like didn't think anything of it. And then he's with the doe basically like in the yard in the adjacent property. I'm watching him. And then I just decide I'm like, I'm going to call or just like snort wheeze and just see if I can get him to come over here. I fucking snort wheezed, and it was like, you could see his whole demeanor. It's hard to explain. Like, the sun was shining on him so perfect. And he was in the open. I could see everything going on. It wasn't like he was in like some cover or anything. I could see every reaction of his body to how I was calling to him. I snort wheezed, and he was so fucking pissed. And this doe that was hot that he was with, I would assume probably thought I was another buck to be like, hey, let's go see what this one's got. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they're heading the opposite direction. I snort wheeze and she hears me. He hears me. She comes towards me. He's following with her. They come all the way to like 60 yards into a clearing at this community scrape. And she's just kind of browsing around. She won't come out to the plot though. Like she's on the wood line on the edge of the plot, just browsing in there. I snort wheeze again when they get to 60. And he's just like proud looking at me, just like in that velvet picture I showed you guys, just like staring at me, chest proud, and the fucking steam is just shooting out of his nostrils. And I'm just like, oh my God. But it's all unfold. It wasn't like that first deer where it all happened so fast and so unexpected. Like this whole thing had time to play out. It's like having a giant in the chum.
Yeah.
And just like, all right, don't put a hook bait down yet. Like wait till he's above 50 and then we'll have the right opportunity here. And that's kind of how this felt. So I see him at 60. I'm texting Weber because then there's also a part of me that's like, get your fucking ass over here so you can kill this thing, or at least like, let's increase our odds. Because he's hunting this same deer a property over. So he jumps out of his tree, runs full speed, like literally full speed all the way to like the other corner of the funnel. So we have both corners of the funnel covered. So there's a bedding area. So if they come out either way, one of us is maybe going to have a shot at this deer. So he's like, all right, I'm all set. I'm in there. And I'm like, I don't see him anymore. And like 10 minutes goes by. And then I see a shadow on a tree. I see the doe come out. And then I see him. He's still there. They're like, they didn't move any further than 80 yards. They were in that same little pocket of woods. So I'm like, holy shit. Try calling again. They will not come into the plot. At this point, they know something's up. They can't see anything because they're sun blinded. They know something's up. They get like to the edge of the plot at 60 yards, but like in a better lane. And I watch her bed down. And then I just watch him do a circle and bed down on this like high spot. And I can just see all I can see is his rack in the sun from 60 yards. I'm like, holy shit. Wind's perfect. It's loud. And it was like wet. I feel like it rained the day before. So the ground was wet. So I'm like, should I just get out of my tree and try to shoot him from the ground? And, I'm like, nah, like that's like, I'm like,
That's what you see on TV.
I'm like, that's what you see on TV. I'm like, should I just wait and like see if they pop up and then use the funnel and have a shot? I'm like, yeah, but what if they don't fucking move until like the dark or like, I'm like, I don't know. I just analyzed the conditions and I was like, I should try to kill this thing from the ground is what went through my head. I also had a time constraint. My in-laws were coming to the house. They're on their en route 2-hour drive to the house. And at this point, as they bedded down, they're 20 minutes away. Claire's texting me at the same time. So I'm just like, like my head's like about to explode. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm getting down. So I quietly let my bow down. My setup just happened where they bedded, and my setup was just absolutely perfect. It's like a stone wall, and there's like 6 big oak trees between me and them. And my body getting down from the tree is in line with those oak trees. So as long as I'm quiet, they shouldn't be able to see me. Shouldn't draw any attention.
So I lower my bow down, climb down super quiet. I hop up like over this like log thing and
You take your boots off?
No.
Oh, you did.
No. I added some flair to
okay.
the story when I first told it. But I thought about taking my boots off.
Okay.
So I get to the oak tree, and then there's like rubble from the stone wall, you know, that has fallen off like on the plot side of the stone wall. So I'm like, I'm going to walk on as many rocks as I can, but stay behind these oak trees. And I do that. I like super quiet, just like get arrow knocked, get from one oak tree to the next, to the next, to the next, till I'm at the very last one. Have my rangefinder. To your like, you've never rangefinder.
Yeah,
you've been
till this year.
Till
right?
this year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm fucking rangefinder, I guess. So I have my bow like in this hand. I keep my rangefinder on a piece of paracord in my pocket so I can like slide it and just drop it. So my bow's in my left hand. Peek out from under the tree, range find him 36 yards. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put my 30-yard pin on him and like, you know, center a mass if he stands up and just let it rip. Figure that I'll shoot a little bit low in case he jumps the string. And I come to full draw behind the oak tree. As soon as I pop my like head out, that doe sees me. She stands up. He stands up. He like stands up looking at me and then starts like is probably 20 degrees quartering away. And I have a like perfect sight picture, 30-yard pin, center of mass, let it rip. And where he was bedded was there's a lay down right there. And to your point earlier, like shooting from the ground, it's like, it's so different. Like the textures look different to your eye at that level than they do up high.
Right.
You know? So he's like stood up. I know I'm on him when I let it rip, but like he's the same color as the root system that's behind him. So I see the arrow stop, but since he was like bounding off and away, I thought I just buried it into the root system. So, and I missed him. I'm like, fuck. So I like let it rip. Fuck. Text message. My parents are here. I'm like, ah! So I just text Weber. I'm like, I just shot under him at 40 yards. Put my phone back in my pocket. Walk over to the bedding area. Don't see him. Don't see my arrow. Don't see any blood. I follow like the closest set of tracks in the leaves from where they bounded off into the swamp. I'm like, I'll try to maybe push him towards Weber and then he'll get a shot at him because it looks like they went off in this direction. So I walk like 30 yards into the swamp. I'm like, that's weird. I don't see any tracks here. Like, again, your eye thinking you saw them go one way and they go another way. And I'm like, I don't see any tracks here. I'm like, fuck, I got to get inside. So I get back into the house. I walk in like disheveled, tell my in-laws the whole story. They're like, oh yeah, that sucks, you know, whatever. And so anyway.
You got a phone call from a...
Yeah. So having a good network, whether you're fishing, hunting, is great. Obviously, you need to be kind of careful in certain situations with too many people in a certain spot and too much pressure on the deer, you know, to your own discretion. But anyways, talk to my in-laws, get a text message from a hunting buddy of mine. So-and-so just said there's a big buck dead at this address with the arrow still in it. ? And I was just like, huh. I was like, I can't remember whether I responded to him or not. I put my phone down. I'm like, I should probably go check that out. So I'm like, fuck it.
You're like, I don't know who else would have shot that.
Yeah,
Dude.
I'm like,
There's
who
not
else?
really any other
But there
stand.
are like 10 guys around here that all hunt, you know?
Right.
So I didn't know. So I, in my long underwear still, jump in the truck. Well, first I tell my in-laws, I'm like, it's an emergency. I gotta go. In my long underwear, I jump in the truck. And Claire's like, you know, Claire, worry ward at times. She's like, oh my God, something bad's happening. So I, in the truck, long underwear, rip down the street. I get to the property. There's 2 police cars there. The friend who texted me is also a police officer. I'd pull up to him like, guys, I just shot at a big buck. I thought I missed him. Like, I heard there's a buck dead over here. So-and-so just texted me, made the relationship clear. They're like, yeah, go ahead. Like, just, talk to the property owner. Like, it's totally up to you at this point, which it is in this state. And walk up. The guy is a Marine, a veteran of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Hunts as well. Super nice gentleman. Shake his hand. I'm like, hey, I heard you have a deer here. He's like, yeah, it's right over here. And like my truck was like, I don't know how I didn't just pull up and look and see it, but like my truck was blocking it. And I like peek around and sure as shit, double long, quartering away, arrow buried opposite shoulder, like extremely lethal hit.
Yeah.
Arrows juiced in blood. I'm freaking out happy. Stars all aligned, just extreme luck, whatever. I asked the guy if I could give him a hug in my long underwear. He's like, I'll take a handshake. I'm like, all right. Shake his hand, jump back in the truck, thank the cops. I shoot back to the house, get Claire, Dad, everyone's there, get back to the guy's house. It was a very seamless operation. Bring the deer back, tag the deer, bring the deer back, and got him.
Yeah.
So, tagged out on 2 big bucks, and both the stories I just like still can't even believe.
And then you got a random sort of piebald doe.
Yeah.
Okay. Just 2 giant bucks and a piebald. Maybe we'll save that one for the next one.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, my 20-minute story was a little longer, but I felt like
that
paint the picture.
even the piebald doe, like you got him on camera, got her on camera and set up. And
what's crazy is I have her going down on camera, on that same camera.
Yeah, it's
which
cool.
is pretty cool. But she came right into the plot. Like she was sunset, shot right up the main run, coming to feed in the plot, and like perfect 15, 20 yard shot.
Yep. It's cool.
But yeah, it's hard. Bow hunting's hard. I mean, I can't believe the season that I've had. It's like, I don't know, like guys hunt their whole lives and never, have shit like that happen. And I don't know. I feel like I feel like I truly like don't deserve it, especially like recovering that deer in the way that it happened. But then at the same time,
that's how it goes. Sometimes you need luck and skill. And I mean, I don't know how many times, like I had almost the same story as that deer happen. I had, it was like a week later, I had, a buck and a doe come in. The buck and doe kind of lay down 50 yards, 60 yards out in front of me. A little buck comes in. The big buck comes in to run off the little buck, snort, wheezes at him, runs away. And I'm like, I think he's still bedded down there. And I was like, I didn't actually know he was still bedded down. That was the one difference in the story. And I was like, just creeping forward up. I got down on my stand. It's like 10 o'clock. I was going to move my stand up further forward into that piece to where I'd been seeing the bucks coming through that piece. And as soon as I creep up, I'm like, that's the tree I think I'm going to want to get in. I see the deer stand up and I see his rack and stuff. Just see his rack and his head over the top of the brush. I'm like trying to get a shot on him and he just bounds off a little bit. Doesn't blow or anything, just moved off quick and quietly. But it's all it takes is that deer stops and stands there for a second. And then now that's an incredible story.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and you hunt long enough, you're going to have the stories of failure and the stories of successes. And, I think early season, you see that the cameras are pretty lethal then. When the deer are on food and you've been able to pattern them all summer, before they go into their rut, I mean, that's like not a guarantee, but like they're going to be in that zone. You can be pretty deadly with them. As the rut comes on, it's now they're useful, where the deer are, but it's not like, it's not like a total leg up, it gives you some ideas of where they are. But early season, if you can get a deer pattern, that's pretty lethal. And,
And also another thing too is, and again, a very short period of time doing this, the density of what I've tried to learn in 2 years, though, I feel like is very dense. Like I've put a lot into my fucking brain.
You did what, 200 plus miles scouting? Last winter.
But I don't
know if I bet you there's people listening that hunted
it was more. I say 250. I'll be 100. Like it was It was more, probably over 300.
Yeah.
If you look at my
So
Onyx,
guys
it's
that have
like
hunted guys that have hunted for 20 years probably haven't even walked that much in the woods.
And honestly, one of the biggest takeaways, yeah, finding scrapes and runs and all that, but like shit like that can change. You get one big laydown and a fucking whole run's change, or you get a new neighbor to move in that's loud and has a bunch of kids and fucking play sets and shit outside. They move off that property, whatever. But understanding, like, especially I feel like around here, understanding the hunting pressure and the frequency that guys are going into the woods is huge. And to your point on early season, I did a lot of research and like meeting people and like this guy lives on this piece. Okay. Like I know him through fishing, whatever, talking like how frequently do you hunt this, that, the other. You kind of like, I knew for that piece where I killed that Big 10 that really no one hunted that till gun season.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's just, it was what it was. Like,
Yeah, it was a free for all.
it was a free for all for a while, you know? And then the other spots I have, the access isn't easy. And, you know, I've got good access. So it's like you wait for those spots to get mucked up during gun season. Those deer are going to push out into those smaller pieces and they're rutting anyway. And those spots are rut funnels and like, you know, between two bedding areas, whatever. It kind of just like all just happened that way.
Yeah.
But in especially more in hindsight now, you know, now that the season's over, that made all the difference in the world. I truly believe.
To your token, archery pressure is one thing, gun pressure is totally different. So, because I never really finished this part of the story, but I was seeing that buck for like almost 2 weeks straight on a daily basis. And I'm like, it's just a matter of time before he comes. I'm sitting on a scrape and he's wind checking his scrape every day coming through. So he comes through in a little bit different spot. But I'm like, one of these days, I'm like, it rained 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, this is the morning he's gonna come freshen that sucker up, and like he comes through and wind checks it again. I'm like, the fuck's going on here? But I saw him so many times at like 40 to 50 yards, and I'm moving, and I'm like cutting limbs, and like he's come through in a different spot, and then eventually he comes through. One of the last mornings I saw him, I think it was like Thanksgiving, so just about when gun season starts. Thanksgiving morning, I see him in the dark, comes right behind me. It was a little dark, didn't get a shot, whatever. But gun season comes in, and it went from, there was another guy hunting the piece I was in pretty regularly, and he was seeing deer most sits. I was seeing deer most sits. Gun season rolls through, and one of the first hunts I had after gun season started, you know, I'm talking to the guy, or maybe it was a week into gun season, just about the tail end of shotgun. And we're like, what the heck happened to all the deer? Like, have you seen anything? And then like next thing you know, it's just like, I'm sitting, he's sitting, he's like, no, nothing again tonight. And I'm like, nothing again tonight. And it just seemed to shut off. And it was after, you know, a pretty consistent, you know, fall of seeing bucks and does, mostly does, but, you know, seeing deer every sit to just being like, where the hell did they go? Then we had a little bit of snow. I walked around there in the snow and I'm like, there's not even tracks.
Yeah.
You know, going from seeing, we had one night where I came out and there's a field right by where I'm hunting. And we saw 15 deer. I'm like, there's no way that all 15 deer got shot. I mean, maybe, but, you know, they go and they find those little hidey holes once there becomes heavy pressure. And I think gun season definitely does that. I saw that for sure this year.
Yeah,
But
totally. Just pressure on animals in general. It's cool to compare and contrast what, you know, what we were talking about, December tuna fishing, big fleets, and just fishing, tuna fishing in general, and deer hunting. It's crazy how much they respond to pressure.
Yeah.
You know? And using that pressure to your advantage and trying to stay like one step ahead of it. And fishing, I feel like I don't know. I haven't hunted long enough to say, but I feel like it's harder to manage pressure on the fish because you're not fucking seeing them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you don't know exactly.
You don't know exactly where they are. Like deer, yeah, you may or may not be seeing them in your sits, but like at least you can go walk the woods
know
and
they
find
weren't
tracks
there.
and this and that.
Yeah.
Like fishing, you really can't.
Right.
If you don't see them with deer, it means they weren't there. With tuna fishing, like, were they there? You know, like they could have just been to the left of you 100 feet.
Exactly.
And you never saw them, you know.
Exactly.
Just wait until there's underwater trail cameras.
I know,
But,
right?
yeah.
That's the next.
I don't know.
Telling you.
Just to sum up like our whole season, like it's awesome. It's cool. The coolest part of the whole thing is getting the phone call from a buddy being like,
I got one.
I just
Let's
put
go
an
find
arrow
it.
in once, like giddy up. Like it's like just the camaraderie to it. It's awesome. Fishing has that too.
I feel like it's way more. I don't know. I feel like it's way more competitive for the kill, but like hunting, I don't know. It's weird. They're similar but very different.
Yeah.
You know,
They definitely
like I hear stories of like fucking with people's cameras and like all that stuff, which happens with fishing too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what's more competitive. I think fishing's probably more competitive from what I've seen so far.
Hunting's just so independent.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
Deer hunting specifically.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, tree stand whitetail hunting. You know, you're just, the biggest difference is you're alone in a tree, it's quiet, you have to be silent, where fishing can be more social a lot of the times.
Yeah.
It's true.
You know,
Yeah, you're talking to people. You might move around.
right.
Yeah.
Plus,
You're
it
trying to be
doesn't cost you
secretive.
like $500 a day to get to the woods.
Right.
You know, unless you have a terribly inefficient car.
All right. We'll
All right.
wrap this up.
Goals.
Get long.
What do you want to see? What do you want to do next year? Fishing, hunting wise, doesn't matter. What are you looking forward to? Everyone has to say one thing at least. Hey, good boy. Riley's
I'm gonna let someone else go first. What I think. I think hunting wise, obviously I want to now kill a bigger buck, but my goal is to just get a buck
yeah.
every winter. If I can get a buck or whatever, a decent deer every winter. If I get a big one, awesome. But I'm trying to have more fun with hunting. I have a lot of fun fishing, but like my brain since I was little was like fishing like work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's work, but it's not with fishing. But it's definitely way more work than hunting is right now. So I'm trying like a few days hunting. I'm like, today would be a good day to go. But I'm like, it's fucking 18 degrees outside.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna be cool for like 2.5 hours, and then I'm gonna be fucking freezing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
You know?
It definitely gets hard.
Yeah.
I have like sort of the same thing. That was the hardest thing. Like, not that I don't hunt a lot now, but definitely like after waking up at 2:00 in the morning all summer long,
Yeah.
and then when you're like it dovetails exactly into hunting
Right.
season, it's like kind of hard to keep that grind mentality
Yeah.
going, to be like, all right, I'm gonna go wake up at
Right.
I mean, it's not as early to get out deer hunting most of the time, but it's, you know, you got to keep that mentality going. And
When you
Definitely.
fall back
oh yeah,
in the middle of hunting season after coming off fishing season,
Pretty
that was the
brutal.
hardest part for me. When
Yeah.
you lose that hour, you got to be out earlier
yeah.
again. It's like waking up to go tuna fishing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was definitely a few mornings like I'd wake up and like almost try to find reasons not to hunt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love this so far, but I'm like, you know, do I really want to do this today? Like,
Especially when you got one in the freezer already. Too.
yeah.
You know.
I was lucky enough, like whatever it was, 4 hunts in, I got a deer. So
You guys did. I got 2 bags out of that first one.
right.
right.
So I still like felt that pressure a little bit,
Yeah.
but
But yeah, fishing wise, I would say, I mean, I felt like the season was great.
didn't you say you want to try to catch 100 between the 2 boats?
I'd like to get 100 giants to the boat between the 2 boats. I feel like we've been close the last few years with a lot of shorts, but it's just difficult because you don't really know what the year's going to bring. You don't know what, the size. So like 100 would be awesome. 100 giants.
I'd be confident in I've always been taught like in my previous career, emergency management, you know, setting goals, building stronger plans, training, exercises. You don't want your goals to be something that's easily reachable. It needs to be on
push
the
for
fringe.
it.
100 big fish between the two boats is on the fringe.
Oh yeah.
I would feel very confident in that if we get the herring again.
Yeah.
If we get the same bait, our bait was good, but if we get the same bait we got last year, that's going to be tough.
It was very up and down last year.
It's gonna be tough to
they're
do.
on mackerel so much.
Yeah.
Right? And you couldn't you could pattern them, but not really.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, if we get herring and there's as many fish, I feel like there's sneakier ways to trick them and have the guy right next to you not get the bite.
Well, you're also going to capitalize on your bites more when you have herring.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Right.
Yep, with the secret rig.
Yeah. Oh,
Dude.
is that your goal?
There's that. Well, I have 3 goals.
All right,
Okay.
let's hear 'em.
Actually 4. I'll make it 4.
Okay.
One's actually stealing one of Taylor's thoughts. But so capitalize on kill days in June, which is every day.
Yeah.
More. This year, line shy anyways, I think we
We were snake bit.
didn't kill a fish
No.
in June. So capitalize in June, which helps bring up towards Taylor's
That's
goal.
because of bass.
Yeah. But capitalize in June. What was my other one? And capitalize on kill days in general. You know, sometimes it's sort of abstract, but you know, there's like always, you have to kind of try to replicate those it's hard because we have a release day where we're all alone and we're like, wow, this spot's great. But knowing you have that 50 boats coming the next day to where there was 3 boats, you know, there's how many days do we see it this year? There's 3 boats, 10 bites, and then there's 50 boats, 10 bites.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, the biomass of fish doesn't change from day to day, but if the pressures come in there heavy, I don't know what the solution is, but somehow capitalize on.
Yeah, we need to
days.
figure out that solution. I don't
Fish.
know.
I think it's pretty simple. You got to fish more instinctually on those days
Right.
instead of just being like guaranteed thing.
Right.
And to give an example of that, we did that
Yeah,
one
yeah.
day.
Yeah, we had
The
like
day in the dark when we were like, we're going fucking here.
right.
And we had our shot,
Yep.
and then it just didn't look right.
Yeah, they came through and it kind of slowed down.
And we were like-
dogfish came in and we were like,
And the boats were fucked. And we were like, we're going to pick up everything and drive all the way to the other end of the fleet. So the complete opposite end of the fleet where there's no pressure, at least coming from one direction.
Yep.
And sure as shit, we got our fucking second rod out and we hooked up.
yep.
You know? Anyways.
But yeah,
But
definitely
yes.
trying to be proactive on those. And it's probably even that simple. Proactive, instinctual on those days. Maybe not just going to your numbers that were good from the day before if that's in the middle, smack dab in the middle of a big fleet of boats. Not to say that that's always what happens. We might have a little something that we think's working for that spot. But, you know, trying to do something a little bit different on those days to make it, you know, just up your odds on those days.
Yeah.
But...
So that's 2.
Yeah.
You have 2 more.
and then there's the secret rigs.
Yeah.
Catch fish on both secret rigs.
Yeah.
That's you know, something to figure out.
Yeah. I think we could do that.
We'll talk about that if it works.
Yeah, that's in the works. I don't know.
If
what
it works really good, then we
Yeah,
probably
we still may not talk about it. But there's 2 secret rigs that I'm excited about. I think the one that you came up with has a lot of potential. That could even be, both of them could be the thing that makes a difference on those kill days.
Yeah.
If either of them work.
Yeah. Is your 4th one catching 1,000 pounders so you can shave your beard?
No, that's just gonna come with it.
That's gonna
not
be
really,
every year.
Yeah. That's not
every
really
year.
the goal, but it is a goal. But no, those are my 4. It was catching on the 2 secret rigs, capitalize in June and capitalize on kill days.
I like it.
You know.
It's hard to capitalize on kill days.
No, but like I think, yeah, like we said,
It's hard.
and there's no real clear way to do it.
Yeah.
But you know, try and do something a little bit different than the next guy if you can, maybe.
It's hard because like
try and.
even the days when there's 80 boats, if you can get where you want to be,
I know a lot of times.
you still get
work.
bit.
Yeah.
You know, that's the part that's tough. Like, I can't tell you how many days I can remember this year where we're in like this disaster of boats.
Yeah, no, it almost
still
doesn't
get the
even
bite.
matter if you're deep or shallow or on the edge. It's like if you're just in that zone,
Right.
you know, there might be boats. There's, you know, how many days was it where there's boats shoal, there's boats on the edge and boats off the edge. And like in that wad, everyone's hooking up. And if you're just like in a good spot, like on either side of it, you're just sitting there like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Right.
Why aren't they here?
Yeah.
But the hardest part to all that is when the fish start eating floaters.
Right.
Then there's just no way to beat the guy next to you because everyone is fishing a floater.
Right.
You know, it's very hard to capitalize on those kill days when you're like, I'm fishing exactly the same as you,
Right.
and you are 150 yards from me, and you're getting the bite, and I'm not.
Right.
You know. Anyways, what's your goals?
I know it's not until way late in the season. I think you could have trolled those December fish,
Oh yeah,
but trying to,
but why? You know what I mean? It'd be fun to do like on a
because
release
it's
day.
400-pound
No, I know
line to a
that.
J hook.
I know that.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like a goal would be to catch a few more giants trolling this year.
Yeah.
You know, not even necessarily experimenting with like different rigs and different this and different that, but just I feel like it gives you a different perspective on where you're fishing if you're moving rather than sitting still.
The
and
weeds
waiting.
were difficult this year, though.
Yeah, they were. I mean, you know, obviously it's, you know, dependent on your conditions, but
Yeah.
I think spending more time trolling. Like we went right to bait fishing this June.
Yeah, we did,
And
like-
usually we troll for a fucking month straight.
We did like one day trolling, and then we're like, oh, the bait looks pretty good at the edge. And then like the next time we went out, we sat the edge and we were marking fish
And
and stuff.
saw
So we're like,
And
yeah,
guys were catching.
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
guys are catching and then you're like, oh, fuck.
yeah, I don't really
you know?
need to. But no, like you say, prospecting a little bit more sometimes could help, you know, being hotter on the bite. And
It's tough. The only thing I have to say to that is well, as soon as the mackerel disappeared this year, forget when that was, September maybe? I think it was September.
yeah.
Late September.
OG
Late
and I
September,
decided to do a
October,
troll day at Peaked, which there was small fish there, and we caught one the day before, and we tried to troll again, and they weren't there that day. And we were like, let's just go troll the bank. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're not going to eat a squid bar. And we trolled, and we trolled, and we trolled, and we were marking them on the bottom, marking them mid-water. It's just, I'm like, I mean, we might get a bite, but like, I just feel like we should just stop the boat, catch a few whatevers, and throw them out. And we did that. We were tight within 4 minutes. So I was like, that being said, like, you can put your time in trolling, but sometimes it's just not going to work, whether you're seeing them or not.
Whether you catch them actively trolling or not.
But then
But
we
it could
saw
bring
that.
you to a spot
True.
where you put a bait out and you hook
True.
up, and then you're
Right.
the only person at that
True.
spot.
Very true.
Right. Now you have this random potentially spot. You know, trolling, you can just kind of go anywhere
I know.
and you're covering so much ground.
So that I agree
All
with.
of a sudden you find some random high ground spot that has a little hump or a swale or
I feel like I
off
would
the
do that.
eastern edge somewhere.
I feel like I'd want to do that and push to do that a lot more if we could fish until sunset.
Right.
Agreed.
But like having to know that you're leaving, especially in the bigger boat, to leave at sometimes 1 o'clock, it's like the day's fucking over by the time you troll
Yeah.
for 2 hours.
Totally.
You know? And then you know, you're not set up in a spot where you might want to be because you didn't set up right away. So now you're like, oh, there really is nothing here. I need to go set up where I should have been set up. And now there's everybody set up and you screwed yourself for the whole day with people that are paying money. So it's a double-edged sword. It's hard.
Some days, but see, that's the thing. I think a lot of days, if you just go fish instinctually all day long, you're probably going to come across something pretty interesting.
Probably.
Some days, of course, you're not going to. But as you know, some days when you
Sitting still, you don't.
Sitting still, you don't. So, and it's not even like you're saying. I would just the fact that you start out by trolling, I wouldn't say you shouldn't have some, live line and rods ready to go.
Right.
Because you're more often than not, I bet over the course of the day, you're like, we marked him here. Oh, and you kind of came back through that depth or something in a similar zone, and then you marked him in the same thing again. And, we got a tide change coming up in an hour.
Let's throw them out.
Case in point, last year, after small fish melee day in that same week to 10-day period, trolling, catching small fish, but marking giants in that one specific spot. And then kill day opened up. We went right to that spot, put baits out, and we were hooked up instantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we wouldn't have found those fish. There was no structure there. It was just up in the high spot. That was it.
Right.
Right. But I don't know. That's my fishing
goal.
goals. I don't have hunting goals yet for this year. I feel like we're kind of still in it. I'm gonna try to sit in a couple hours here. So just find another good buck is my hunting goal. All right, we got to go. Riley's giving us a sign anyways, chewing on his minute. So we're going to end this on OG's 3 words of fishing wisdom. Remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at SeaBrosFishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros Fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit massbayguides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.